Chapter 35:35. It was still early, so he calmed himself down and waited for the night to fall. He was already a Heaven Realm full circle expert, so he didn't need to cultivate anymore. His current bottleneck was the way of heaven, but it wasn't that easy to break through. He might not even be able to successfully break through on Heaven Realm Island, let alone in the secular world. Therefore, Lenny didn't try to do useless things, but rested quietly. Night fell slowly. He stood up slowly and walked toward the cave. He stopped in front of the stone door in front of the cave, then slowly placed his hand on the stone door and began to circulate the art of dragon mastery. With previous experiences, this step could be said to be a walk in the park for Lenny. After the stone door recognized him as its master, it slowly rose, and the familiar first floor of the Xinyuan cave was revealed in front of Lin Yi's eyes. The scene behind the stone door was similar to the last time Lenny came. He didn't stay for long, and directly walked to the second stone door at the back of the hall. Just like last time, he circulated the mantra, and the second stone door slowly opened. The third stone door was also the most important stone door. He walked over and stopped in front of the stone door. The third stone door was the same as the second stone door. After circulating the mantra, it slowly opened. He walked in, and without looking at the scene behind the stone door, he directly came in front of the fourth stone door, which was also the most important stone door. He walked over and stopped in front of the stone door. In front of the stone door, there was also a stone tablet standing on the side of the door with a sentence carved in seal script. Third stage full circle, weapon in hand, hit the door with the weapon to enter. The third stage full circle referred to the third stage full circle of the art of dragon mastery. He took out the Heaven Realm magical staff that he had forged before, and then took a deep breath. He circulated the mantra, and this time, he circulated the mantra at full speed, without holding back, and directly released the third stage of the art of dragon mastery. At the same time, he infused true chi into the Heaven Realm magical staff, and suddenly smashed it towards the stone door. Boom! The strength of the Heaven Realm full circle, coupled with the full circulation of the mantra, smashed towards the stone door with all his true chi, making a loud bang. He was just about to raise his hand. He put away his sky-class staff, but what he didn't expect was that his staff seemed to be stuck to the stone door, and he couldn't pick it up. He paused, but he remembered his previous experience. His hand was stuck on the stone door, and he couldn't move it away. Perhaps this was the stone door's test as well. He took a deep breath and let the magic staff stick onto the stone door. What happened next was within Lin Yi's expectations. At this time, there was no need for Lin Yi to take the initiative to circulate his mental cultivation method. The mental cultivation method began to circulate passively, and Lin Yi's physical strength and true chi slowly flowed into the stone door through his staff. However, with past experience, Lin Yi did not panic at all this time. Every time, it was more or less the same, so he calmly faced everything in front of him. As time passed, the amount of true chi in Lin Yi's body decreased, and finally, all of it entered the stone door. Then, the energy that entered the stone door flowed back into Lin Yi's body. Unsurprisingly, the energy this time was pure chi. Just like last time, it was purer than before. The stone door once again helped Lin Yi complete the filtration. Then, the energy flowed back into the stone door, and just like that, it flowed back and forth 4 times. Finally, the fourth stone door suddenly issued a loud rumble, and the energy flow between Lin Yi and the stone door stopped, and the stone door began to rise slowly. Phew! Lin Yi let out a long breath. It seemed that the fourth stone door was opened in the same way as the previous 2 stone doors. The stone door opened, and Lin Yi did not dare to delay. He had to leave the cave before dawn, or else he would be locked inside. Of course, he could leave the next day, at most it would be a matter of waiting for one more day. However, Lin Yi's time was quite tight. The 5 Elements sect might summon the challengers back for the Heaven Rank meeting at any time. So Lin Yi had to hurry. Just like behind the third stone door, there was a very simple small room. There was still no light source in the room, but it was still as bright as day. There was still a small platform in front of the stone room, and on top of the platform, there was still an antique small box. Apart from that, there was nothing else inside. Seeing this, Lin Yi was neither happy nor disappointed. Apart from the box, there was nothing else here. This was also within his expectations, but he always hoped to encounter something unexpected, but there was nothing. Every time he encountered a small box, Lin Yi was already used to it. Walking forward, Lin Yi stretched out his hand and took the antique small box. The small box was light, and it was almost the same as before. It seemed that there should be a cultivation method or a casting method inside. After putting away the small box, Lin Yi raised his head and looked around the stone room behind the fourth stone door. Lin Yi wanted to see if there was a so-called fifth stone door, but to Lin Yi's disappointment, this should be the last stone door. Because there was no fifth stone door in the stone room, it was empty and smooth stone walls. It seemed that there was no way out. His path in the secular world was almost finished. If there was no accident, this would be the last time Lin Yi came to the Xinyuan cave mansion. There would probably be no more fortuitous encounters in the future. What would there be on the Heaven Stage Island? However, Lin Yi didn't think that the Xinyuan cave mansion would still exist. After all, the Xinyuan cave mansion here was probably related to Old Lin. Who else could he rely on the Heaven Stage Island? He could only rely on his own hands. Jiao Lao, this is the last stone room. Your memory should have been unlocked, right? What's the next step like? Lin Yi took a deep breath and asked Jiao Yazi. Yes, this is the last stone door. There is no more. As for my memory, I just remembered it is actually limited. The days that I can accompany you should not be much longer, because my mission has been completed. Jiao Yazi said word by word. What? Mission completed? You haven't said anything yet? Who are you? Where did you come from? This stone door is gone. Where should I go in the future? Lin Yi's questions came one after another. Chapter 35-36. However, I only have a small portion of the original body's memories. The rest of the memories haven't been solidified, so I don't know. Jiao Yazi said. If you really want to ask, then I can only say that I'm afraid I'll only appear again when you reach a certain level. Appear again? Lin Yi paused. You're leaving? Not leaving, it's hard to explain. You'll know when the time comes, Jiao Yazi said. All right, Lin Yi knew Jiao Yazi's speciality. If he didn't say something, you wouldn't be able to get it out no matter how you asked, and he probably didn't even know himself. Then what's in the box? It's nothing. Won't you know when you go back? Why ask me? Jiao Yazi smiled. Now, you basically know everything I know. My mission is complete. All right. Lin Yi sighed and left the cave. There was still some time before daybreak, so Lin Yi sat cross-legged at the entrance of the cave, waiting for the sun to rise. It wasn't until the stone door was completely closed that Lin Yi stood up and left, returning to the inn. Although there wasn't much left in the Xinyuan cave, it was a memory for Lin Yi, and Lin Yi didn't want others to find it or destroy it. So, Lin Yi waited until the stone door was completely closed before leaving. After returning to the inn, it was time for Lin Yi to leave as well. He said goodbye to Old Lin, and this time, he might be gone for a few months, or maybe a few years. It all depended on whether things went smoothly on Heaven Stage Island. However, Old Lin was still very supportive of him going to Heaven Stage Island. Lin Yi told him his decision, and Old Lin only nodded with a smile. Very well, in the common world, you don't have anyone to rely on. You relied on your own strength to survive until now, and on Heaven Stage Island, you can also rely on your own strength to make a name for yourself. Lin Yi didn't mention Zhang Liju from Sky Class Island. He could be considered his backer, but whether or not he could meet Zhang Liju at the beginning, whether or not he had the right to meet him at his level was unknown. Perhaps this backer would only be useful after he reached a certain level, right? In the past, he probably had to rely on himself. What Lin Yi did not know was, it was the same for him in the secular world. When he reached a certain level in the later stage, Lin Dong helped him deal with the unexpected factor of the blood-clothed underworld sect. At other times, he still relied on himself. He brought the girls back to Yanjing City. Lin Yi didn't stay in Donghai any longer and went to find Tianlong and Lingshan. He wanted to cure them, and then gather all his followers in the common world for a meeting to discuss and arrange everything after he left. Curing Tianlong and Lingshan and raising their strength to Sky-class late phase peak wasn't hard for Lin Yi. At first, Lin Yi was worried about the materials for the Qi-gathering pill, but now that he had Tian Shan, the young master of the Sky Elixir sect, he had all the materials. As for the rest of Lin Yi's followers who weren't going to Sky-class Island, they were all gathered together by Lin Yi. Even Dafeng Bro and Kuan Siyuan were called over by Lin Yi. Lin Yi had to let these followers get to know each other, and then they could help each other and unite against the common enemy. Some of these followers knew each other, but some weren't familiar with each other. But with Lin Yi, the soul of the group, these people were able to gather together easily. Lin Yi also said that he might be gone for a few months or years, and he wanted these people to unite and not cause trouble. But they didn't need to be afraid of trouble, and they would all be under Lingshan's control and deployment. Naturally, these people wouldn't say anything about it. They all agreed wholeheartedly. In their eyes, Lin Yi was a godlike existence, raising their strength to Earth-class late-phase peak and giving them so many Qi gathering pills for them to use. It was simply too amazing. Kong Xiaobo and Fatty Lai came as well. He knew that it wasn't much use to raise their strength, but he did it anyway, including Zhou Ruoming. Lin Yi gave him Zhou Ruoming, but he didn't give him anything higher. He didn't need that much strength at his level anyway. After that, Lin Yi said goodbye to Sun Jingyi, Yang Qiqi, Su Shihan, Cheng Yi, and Ing Ziyu. But Lin Yi suddenly remembered Chun Shi and turned to Tian Chan. Tian Chan, where's Chun Shi? She's doing great. Tian Dai's taking care of her. She's called Tian Shi now, and I'm going to bring them with me to Sky-class Island, Tian Chan said. Ugh, who's Tian Dai? And Chun Shi, she's already a perfected master? Lin Yi was shocked. How long had it been since Chun Shi left? She's already Earth-class mid-phase after eating small Qi gathering pills. But don't you have a bunch of them? I'll bring some back, and I'll be perfected, right? Tian Chan said casually. As for Tian Dai, she's the one who went to your house to save you. She's my personal maid. I see. Lin Yi was speechless. With everything settled, it was time for Lin Yi to return to Five Elements Sexin. They hadn't gathered everyone yet, but it was good for Lin Yi to go back and wait. As for Tang Yun's matter, Lin Yi had found a way, but he hadn't told them yet. First of all, it involved Lin Yi's biggest secret, the Jade Space. Second, Lin Yi wasn't ready yet, and it was too early to say it. From behind a four-stone door, Lin Yi took out a small box. There were 2 scrolls inside. One was the 4th stage of the Art of Dragon Mastery, but it said that it could only be practiced when breaking through to Sky Dao or above. When breaking through to Sky Dao, it could be used as a support. Practicing it below Sky Dao would be useless, and the best-case scenario would be to go mad, and the worst-case scenario would be death by explosion. This Art of Dragon Mastery also had a cool name, Duotian. Of course, Lin Yi wasn't stupid enough to try it. Although he could practice it when breaking through to Sky Dao, when would he be considered to have broken through to Sky Dao? Was it when he took the Heavenly Golden Pill, or all of this was unknown, and Lin Yi didn't dare to try it? If he went mad at this time, he'd be screwed. So, Lin Yi decided to find a chance to ask Jiao Lao. These days of continuous work, Lin, you didn't even have the chance to enter the Jade Space to chat. Chapter 35-37. This time, after the condensation of the Jade Pendant, other people could enter the space of the Jade Pendant, not just Lin Yi himself. Of course, it was the soul that entered, not the body. However, there was a prerequisite, and that was only those who were incomparably loyal to Lin Yi and had no bad intentions could enter. Even if they had bad intentions, they couldn't enter the space of the Jade Pendant. And this wasn't Lin Yi's judgment, but the judgment of the space of the Jade Pendant automatically. After all, it was only the soul that entered the space of the Jade Pendant. If there were any bad intentions, it was very likely to turn the tables. As for the specifics, Lin Yi wasn't too sure, because the condensation instructions didn't explain. It only said that those who weren't absolutely loyal couldn't enter the space of the jade pendant. However, in Lin Yi's eyes, Tang Yun didn't have any problems because Tang Yun's feelings for Lin Yi were extremely deep. In order to let Lin Yi not suffer, she would rather suffer herself. Wasn't this kind of person loyal enough? She could definitely pass the test of the space of the jade pendant, right? As long as Tang Yun could enter the space of the jade pendant to cultivate, then breaking through to the peak would probably be a matter of minutes. After all, she had already touched the bottleneck. As for the energy stones, Lin Yi also thought about it, and also gave Tang Yun a test, but the effect was very little. After all, Tang Yun's arts were different from Wang Xinyan and Zhang Naipeo. They could actively absorb unlimited energy, but Tang Yun could only absorb it passively. The energy stones could definitely provide more energy than the current energy of heaven and earth, but it definitely wouldn't be too much. It definitely wasn't enough for her to break through to the peak. So, only the space of the jade pendant was omnipotent. Lin Yi brought the girls back to the inn of the Five Elements sect, and Lin Yi began to refine the space of the jade pendant. At the same time, in the room of the Xiantian ancestor of the Five Elements sect, sat a handsome man with long hair and a very warm appearance. It gave people a feeling of sunshine, but this person's eyes were faintly gloomy. It made people feel awe at first glance and not look down on him because of his appearance. Chancellor Nantian, I have already prepared for the Sky class meeting according to your orders. At this moment, the Xiantian ancestor was actually kneeling on one knee. If anyone was present, they would definitely be shocked. Ancestor Xiantian, the high and mighty acting sect master of the Five Elements sect, actually treated the person in front of him like this. The Five Elements sect was the initiator, organizer, and executor of the Heaven Stage Island plan. Therefore, it was known as the #1 sect in the ancient times. This was a rather awesome existence. All the ancient sects that wanted to advance to the heavenly Tao were extremely respectful to Patriarch Xiantian. However, Patriarch Xiantian was as careful as a servant. Yes, since I came here, Island Master has asked me to be in charge of guiding the disciples of each island. The man in the ancient robe nodded and said, Xiantian, you have done well. When the time comes, you will follow me. Become my subordinate. Thank you, Chancellor South Heaven, for your guidance. Patriarch Black Earth was overjoyed. This Chancellor Nantian was obviously an important figure on the Heavenly Stage Island. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to contact him in the secular world as a guiding mentor. Patriarch Xiantian was worried that he would not have anyone to rely on when he reached Heaven Stage Island. If the others were all stronger than him, he would be screwed. In the end, the South Heaven Chancellor delivered himself to his doorstep. This was a great opportunity for him. Yes, you just have to do your job well. I need a few vicious and intelligent subordinates. Chancellor Nantian chuckled and said in an indifferent tone, "All right, South Heaven Chancellor. Speaking of vicious, my disciple is also a dragon among dragons. Do you think he can learn from you?" Patriarch Xiantian quickly recommended Kong Ming Ming to South Heaven Chancellor. This won't do. I can only take you with me, and that's already my limit. As for where the newcomers go, the teleportation array will automatically allocate them. I have no right to interfere. This is the rule of Heaven Stage Island. Even I can't interfere, South Heaven Chancellor said. I see. Patriarch Xiantian was a little disappointed. It seemed that Kong Ming Ming could only rely on himself. Yes, the Heaven Stage Island plan is going well, right? Because newcomers from the secular world to Heaven Stage Island only appear once every 1,000 years. Our Island Master also places great importance on this. Back then, Heaven Stage Island's newcomer, Master Zhang Liju, walked up from your secular world's Five Elements sect. Now, he is already a proud figure on the Five Islands. Even the Island Master is respectful to him. I hope that this time, your secular world can also produce such a figure. Don't let our Island Master down, South Heaven Chancellor said. I think Kong Ming Ming has this potential. Master Zhang Liju is an elixir refiner, and so is Zhao Ming. His potential is limitless. I think he can satisfy the Island Master. Oh, Zhao Ming is that disciple of mine? Patriarch Xianshun quickly explained. Oh, is that so? That's not bad. But is this the only elixir refiner that came from the secular world? South Heaven Chancellor asked. Of course not. My senior brother has another disciple called Tianshan. She is also an elixir refiner, but she isn't very strong. Her brother is better at alchemy, but her brother will definitely go to Heaven Stage Island. There are two other freelancers, a man and a woman, but they're just a couple, Patriarch Shinshin said. Couple? What do you mean? South Heaven Chancellor asked. He's just a pretentious rogue cultivator. He thinks he's so awesome and pretentious all the time. That woman is his woman. Patriarch Xianshan said, Right, South Heaven Chancellor, we have to be careful of that kid when we go to Heaven Stage Island. Not only does that kid show off, but he also has strength. He is our archenemy. I'm afraid that he will continue to go against us when he gets to Heaven Stage Island. He still dares to go against us when he gets to Heaven Stage Island? South Heaven Chancellor laughed proudly. Ha! This is the funniest joke I've ever heard. If he dares to stab us, I'll slap him into the sea. Oh, right, I forgot. That Lin, he might be showing off in the secular world, but when he gets to Heaven Stage Island, he's nothing. Patriarch Xianshan said flatteringly. Don't worry, when we get to Heaven Stage Island, you will definitely be awesome if you follow me. South Heaven Chancellor said proudly. Thank you, South Heaven Chancellor. Patriarch Xianshan was relieved after hearing that. From Chancellor Nanshan's words, he should be doing very well on Heaven Stage Island. Then hold the Heaven Stage meeting. Those inheritors don't have to attend. When the time comes, they will gather together, and I'll tell them what to pay attention to, South Heaven Chancellor said faintly. Chapter 35-38. Chancellor Nantian made a throat-slitting gesture. You'll know when the time comes. Okay. The Shinshin ancestor was startled. What did this mean? Death? However, Chancellor Nantian didn't say much, and he didn't dare to ask. But this was better. He had planned to target Lin Yi at the Sky Class meeting, announcing a piece of bad news for Lin Yi. Although this news could hurt Lin Yi, he was afraid that Lin Yi would retaliate. After all, those inheritors were with Lin Yi. It was okay to force them, but if they were angry and joined forces with Lin Yi, it wouldn't be fun. But now, those inheritors weren't participating in the meeting. Lin Yi was really alone. None of the participants would support Lin Yi. They were only doing it for their own benefit, especially with Pin Liang and Nai Peo leading the way. They definitely wouldn't dare to not support his decision. After all, Pin Liang and Nai Peo weren't there for nothing. They would kill anyone who didn't agree. These two were existences that even the Xianshan ancestor had a headache with. He'd be in danger if Pin Liang's aura made him lose his footing and allowed Nai Peo to use his wasp absorption arts on him. And so, this was the reason why Nai Peo expressed his goodwill to the everyday and everyday sect as soon as he recovered. Okay, go make the announcement and let the participants come back. Prepare to land on Sky Class Island. Chancellor Nantian said. Yes. The Shinshin ancestor said quickly. Okay, then I'll go rest first, Chancellor Nantian said. Okay, please. The Shinshan ancestor said. After that, Chancellor Nantian directly went through the wall in front of the Shinshin ancestor. With a whoosh, he disappeared in an instant. However, the Shinshin ancestor seemed to be used to it and didn't show any surprise at all. The method of making the jade was similar to the last time. But now, whatever materials Lin Yi wanted, the sect of the inheritors could help him find, especially the Sky Elixir sect that Tianshan was in. They had everything. So, materials weren't a problem, and Lin Yi had successfully condensed a Sky-class weapon, so upgrading the Jade Space was a piece of cake. In just one night, Lin Yi successfully condensed it, and Lin Yi called Tang Yun to his room. Lin Yi, why did you call me so early in the morning? Ever since Tang Yun discovered that her arts were emotional, she didn't have as much of a taboo with Lin Yi. She didn't want to interfere anymore. I called you to sleep, Lin Yi said. Sleep? Tang Yun asked, what? Sleep with me now, Lin Yi said. Ah. Tang Yun's eyes went wide as she blushed. What are you talking about? You, Tang said. You? Tang. You can? You can break through by sleeping with me. Lin Yi smiled. I broke through just by sleeping with you? Tang Yun was stunned. How is that possible? I can break through by sleeping with you. Tang Yun was stunned. How is that possible? Lin Yi prepared to tell Tang Yun about the Jade Space. After all, Tang Yun wasn't an outsider. She was his first real girlfriend, and Tang Yun was going to enter the Jade Space as well. I don't know. Don't you have energy stones in Wang Xinyan? Tang Yun was confused. Wang Xinyan is in the late stage. I'm talking about the early stage, Lin Yi said. I relied on a Jade Space in the early stage. Ugh. Wang Xinyan is late stage. I'm talking about early stage. Lin Yi said. I rely on the Jade Space in the early stage. It's a place where I usually practice. You and I can enter when you fall asleep, Lin Yi said. But you have to be with me first. You have to hold my hand and get close to me. It's a place I usually train in. You can come in when you fall asleep, Lin Yi said, but you have to be with me first, hold my hand, and get close to me. Lin Yi said, but first you have to hold my hand and get close to me. It wasn't that Lin Yi was trying to take advantage of Tang Yun. It was the truth. The Jade Space could let others enter with both hands. Of course, this was only the first time. After the Jade Space recognized the owner, Tang Yun would be able to enter on her own. As long as she was within Lin Yi's range, she could send a signal to Lin Yi. After Lin Yi agreed, Tang Yun could enter the Jade Space on her own. The first time, she would rely on the Jade to judge if the person was loyal to Lin Yi. The second time, she would rely on Lin Yi to judge. The Jade wouldn't be able to stop her. Oh, really? Tang Yun felt like she was listening to a book from heaven. She was confused by Lin Yi's words. Try it, and you'll know. Lin Yi nodded. Tang Yun lied down beside Lin Yi. If it wasn't for her absolute trust in Lin Yi and the fact that Lin Yi wouldn't use this method to trick her into bed, Tang Yun would really think that Lin Yi was plotting something against her. Tang Yun lay beside Lin Yi and held Lin Yi's hand. Her breathing became erratic. This was the scene she had dreamed of, lying together with Lin Yi and whispering to each other. It seemed so distant to her before, but now it felt so real. Are you asleep? Lin Yi asked. Yup, no. Tang Yun shook her head. How could she fall asleep? She was too excited. That won't do. If you don't sleep, you can't enter the Jade Space. Lin Yi said helplessly. Yup, I'll try my best. Tang Yun closed her eyes. Okay. Lin Yi nodded. Finally, after half an hour, Tang Yun fell asleep. Lin Yi saw Tang Yun in the Jade Space. Tang Yun needed to sleep, but Lin Yi didn't need to. He could enter the Jade Space directly. Oh, where is this? Tang Yun, who just entered the Jade Space, was scared. It was dark inside, and there was nothing around. She couldn't see the end of it. Tang Yun couldn't see the Jade Space that Lin Yi used for storage. Ah, who are you? Tang Yun saw Jiao Yazi and took 2 steps back in shock. I'm the one who told Lin Yi to save you after you were drugged by Zhong Pingliang, Jiao Yazi said proudly. Oh, it's you. Tang Yun nodded. You're such a busybody. Ah, Jiao Yazi was stunned. He was waiting for Tang Yun to thank him. He didn't expect that she would say, you're a busybody. This made Jiao Yazi mad and speechless. Huh. Lin Yi entered the Jade Space and heard the conversation between Tang Yun and Jiao Yazi. He couldn't help but laugh. Chapter 35-39. This made Tang Yun a little embarrassed. She coughed twice and said, Lin Yi, is this inside the space of the Jade Pendant? That's right. Didn't you notice that the heaven and earth spiritual energy here is especially rich? Lin Yi nodded and said, Yeah, it's really like that. Tang Yun was curious when she came in and didn't notice the heaven and earth spiritual energy. Now that she heard what Lin Yi said, she suddenly realized that the heaven and earth spiritual energy here was actually several times more than in the outside world. It was much more than in the Snow Valley. Thinking of this, Tang Yun quickly sat cross-legged on the ground and began to circulate the ruthless tactics. Time passed quickly, and it was 8 o'clock the next morning. The inheritor and Tian Chan were called to the empty space behind the inn alone. Perhaps Ancestor Xianxin had already noticed that there seemed to be something wrong with Tian Chan, so he didn't let her participate in the Heaven Rank Conference. In this way, Lin Yi's position in the Heaven Rank Conference was even more disadvantageous, and it was more convenient for Ancestor Xianxin to manipulate his plan. In the conference room, all the participants, including Rock Candy, Sydney, and Elder Anya, who were related to the inheritor, were also arranged to the empty space downstairs of the inn. When Lin entered the conference room, the atmosphere inside made him feel indescribably depressed. Everyone looked at him strangely. Previously, Kong Mingming had already secretly connected all the people, so these people naturally looked at Lin Yi with some pity. In their opinion, Lin Yi would definitely become the sacrifice of the Heaven Islands plan. What surprised Lin Yi was that he actually saw Tag Onlong. This guy should be a very important part of Ancestor Xuanxin's plan. Otherwise, Ancestor Xianxin wouldn't have taken the risk to find trouble with him and force Sun Jingyi to save him. Ahem. All right, since everyone is here, the Heaven Rank Conference is about to officially begin. Ancestor Xianxin walked into the conference room after Lin Yi. Behind him was Kong Mingming, but what was surprising was that he and Kong Mingming sat on both sides of the conference room's main seat. He was not sitting in the middle. Could it be that there were more distinguished guests coming? This made all the trial challengers whisper at the same time. They wanted to know what had happened. Who was more powerful than the Five Elements sect? How is this possible? Silence. Kong Mingming's expression turned solemn as he said, "Let us give a warm round of applause to Chancellor Nantian, the welcoming envoy from Heavenly Island." The so-called libation was a position similar to that of a mentor on Heaven Island. This position could be big or small. However, when Kong Mingming saw how arrogant he was, he knew that this person was probably a powerful person. Moreover, he didn't look old, only in his 40s. Looking at his appearance, he seemed to be around 30 years old. This kind of person was probably in existence with boundless prospects on Heaven Stage Island. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been sent to the secular world to carry out a mission. Just when everyone was stunned and didn't expect that someone from Heaven Stage Island would actually come, a black shadow appeared in the main seat of the conference room with a whoosh. It could be said that he came and went without a trace. There was no sign at all. No one knew where this guy came from. Primordial spirit. Lin Yi looked at the person and was a little surprised. This person was not a physical entity, but something similar to a primordial spirit. An ordinary cultivator might not notice this, but Lin Yi dealt with two primordial spirits every day, so naturally, he could see this person's attribute at a glance. Chancellor Nantian had just sat down when he heard someone say that he was a primordial spirit. He immediately snorted coldly. "Who is this little bastard? How dare you criticize me in front of this chancellor? Xianxin, is this the quality of the cultivators in the secular world?" "Chancellor Nantian, please calm down." Kong Mingming sneered in his heart. This Lin Yi was really something. He had just arrived, and he had already offended Chancellor Nantian. However, little did he know, Chancellor Nantian had already received a hint from Patriarch Xianxin. Even without this incident, Chancellor Nantian would still target Lin Yi. This person is an unorthodox rogue cultivator. His name is Lin Yi, and he's a pretentious person. Just ignore him. Someone like him will only be courting death if he goes to Heavenly Island. That's right. Kong Mingming is right. Don't think that you are all-powerful in the secular world. Once you reach Heavenly Island, you are nothing. Once you reach Heavenly Island, you're the newcomers of the lowest level. Just like the other newcomers who come to Heavenly Island. If anyone thinks that they are great, then I don't even need to do anything. They will die miserably. Chancellor Nantian nodded and said, "That Lin Yi, do you think that you can be arrogant just because I have a primordial spirit here? All right, I will remember you. Although my primordial spirit avatar is nothing, don't let my main body meet you when you go to Heavenly Island. Otherwise, you'll die miserably." Lin Yi didn't expect that his casual words would attract such hatred from Chancellor Nantian. Wasn't this a bit unrealistic? Could it be that Chancellor Nantian, Patriarch Xianxin, and Kong Mingming had reached some secret agreement? Thinking about it, it should be so. Otherwise, why would this guy target me for no reason? Lin, he secretly remembered Chancellor Nanshan's appearance. When he arrived at Heavenly Island in the future, he would hide from him first and then find a chance to get rid of him. Chancellor Nantion, don't lower yourself to his level. Next, tell me about the things we need to pay attention to when we go to Heavenly Island. Kong Mingming laughed and said in his heart. In his opinion, Lin Yi's death was already in the countdown. Even if Lin Yi endured it later, he would definitely die when he arrived at Heavenly Island. Well, the first thing is that I want to tell everyone about the Heavenly Tao. That is, what is the Heavenly Tao? Chancellor Nanshan's words made everyone hold their breath, including Lin Yi. This was because everyone had heard that the Heavenly Tao was above Heavenly Island. But what exactly was the Heavenly Tao? No one knew. Was the Heavenly Tao a level or just a general term? No one knew. So when Chancellor Nantion wanted to explain, everyone quickly prepared to listen. Chapter 3540. Chancellor Nanshan's words shocked all the cultivators present. So, the Heavenly Tao was immortal cultivation. This was a legendary existence. So it could really be realized. And a cultivator was equivalent to a Qi refinement stage cultivator. Thinking about it, it made sense. After all, cultivators cultivated true Qi. Wasn't this the Qi refinement stage? However, what they couldn't accept was that their strength, which they were so proud of, would be nothing if they went to Heavenly Island. Would there be a lot of experts then? Or experts like Chancellor Nantion were only a minority? They didn't dare to ask these questions. After all, with Lin Yi as an example, no one dared to speak carelessly. Next, according to the rules of the previous years, I will distribute the cultivation mantra to everyone. Chancellor Nantion's words made everyone in the meeting room breathe rapidly. Cultivation's mantra and mnemonic formula? Did that mean that everyone could break through to become a Heavenly Tao expert through cultivating this mantra, which was a so-called foundation establishment stage expert? If that was the case, then, could they not go to Heaven Island and cultivate in the secular world? And Lin, he was a little excited. He didn't expect that there would really be a mantra to break through to Heavenly Tao. Looking at the excited crowd, Chancellor Nantion suddenly sneered and said, "I haven't finished speaking. Don't be too happy too early." Everyone's joy lasted for less than a minute, and they heard Chancellor Nantion's cold words. Although this mantra can allow one to break through to the Heavenly Tao, it is incomplete and not the complete mantra. Chancellor Nantion said, "As everyone knows, every cultivator can only cultivate one mantra. If you want to cultivate another, your strength will be crippled, and you will go mad. And when you step into the ranks of immortal cultivators, you only have one chance to choose a mantra. If you think that the mantra is not useful, then you can change to another one. You can also change to this mantra passed down from ancient times, but this mantra has a problem. It can only help you break through to foundation establishment stage. If you want to go further and reach my level, then it won't work." There is no doubt. This mental cultivation method mnemonic chant is just for show. If the person who cultivates it forcefully cultivates above the foundation establishment stage, they will go berserk and become an idiot. There is an example on our Heaven Stage Island. Previously, the dignified Heaven Stage Island Vice Island mastered the will of heaven because he cultivated this crippling mental cultivation method. Now, he had cultivated into an idiot. You can follow in his footsteps. Everyone trembled in fear when they heard this. Even the Vice Island Master of the middle island of Heaven Stage Island had turned into a retard. Then this mental cultivation method was really useless. Those who originally had the thought of giving it a try had now dispelled their interest. Although everyone didn't know what the middle island of the Heaven Step Island was, the name of the Vice Island Master was frightening enough. In that case, Senior Nantion, our mantra has already reached the peak of the Heaven rank. There is no further mantra. Then we have no choice but to change the mantra. Although our practitioner's arts are pretty good now, we can't continue anymore. Pinliang spoke up at this time. "Not bad. That's a good question." Chancellor Nantion nodded and said, "After you come to the Heaven Step Island, you can have a chance to obtain the continuation of the original mantra. Your mantra may be a secret to you, but on the Heaven Step Island, it's not a secret at all, except for some very unpopular ones, such as the Chrysanthemum treasure book that some of you have cultivated. The rest can be found, but divine arts like the Chrysanthemum treasure book should be able to continue to be cultivated. As long as you know the method to break through to the heavenly path, it's fine. I see. Thank you for enlightening me, Senior Nantion. Pin Liang nodded. All right. Xian Chun, distribute the breakthrough mantra. Chancellor Nantion said, this thing is just a formality. It's a rule for thousands of years, but I suggest you throw it away directly. Otherwise, that would be a mistake. Don't blame me for not reminding you. Yes. Xian Chun Ancestor nodded and handed a stack of printed mantra to Kong Ming beside him for him to distribute. Kong Ming distributed the mantra in his hand one by one and then returned to his original position. Most of the trial takers tore it up without even looking at it. They were also afraid that if they couldn't help but look at it, they wouldn't be able to control themselves from cultivating it. But there were also people who threw it away after looking at it. They couldn't help but be curious. However, basically everyone either tore it up, threw it away, or left it on the table without touching it. Only Lin Yi picked up the mantra with interest and looked at it. Creation Battle Art? Lin Yi glanced at the mantra. It was a very magnificent mantra. What surprised Lin Yi was that the style of the mantra between the lines was actually somewhat similar to the 4th level of the art of Dragon Mastery, Heaven Snatching, but the content was completely different. So, Lin Yi couldn't help but study it carefully. Some people are so full of themselves. Do they think they're very powerful? I've already said that this mantra is trash, but some people can't help but look at it. Chancellor Nantion saw that Lin Yi actually studied it carefully and was a little annoyed. Was he fucking ignoring his words? Senior Nantion, please calm down. This Lin Yi is known as the #1 pretentious rogue cultivator. If you want to look at it, let him. Kong Ming couldn't wait for Lin Yi to die from chi deviation. There's a good saying, if you don't court death, you won't die. He's courting death. What can we do about it? Everyone has their own choice. But since this mantra has been given to you, it's your choice whether to look at it or not. If you're willing to cultivate it, then I won't care so much. Chancellor Nantion nodded and said lightly, and I think it's not bad. Lin Yi took out his phone and flipped to the 4th level of the art of Dragon Mastery, Heaven Snatching, and began to compare it. Because the 4th level stated that it could only be used when breaking through the heavenly Tao, Lin Yi didn't dare to fix it. The lesson of chi deviation last time was not enough. Lin Yi's memory was better. After reading the art of Dragon Mastery, he continued to study the creation battle art. He also locked his phone and put it on the table. Chapter 35:41. And so, while Lin Yi wasn't paying attention, Pin Liang grabbed Lin Yi's phone with a whoosh. Lin Yi was taken aback. He didn't think that someone would dare take his phone in this situation. However, he wanted to snatch it, but after thinking about it, he decided against it. He wanted to keep a low profile. If he caused trouble at the heavenly rank meeting, he would probably fall into Patriarch Schwanchen's trap. He might even be kicked out of the heavenly rank meeting. The phone was locked anyway, and Pin Liang wouldn't be able to get in. As expected, Pin Liang was a little disappointed when he saw the password. He glanced at Lin Yi's phone's background and couldn't help but feel envious of Lin Yi. It was a photo of Lin Yi, the inheritors Bingtang, Sydney, Tian Chan, Xin Yan, Han Jingjing, and the others. The location seemed to be in a small village. Who was this old man? Fuck. Pin Liang saw the old man standing with Lin Yi in the photo and shivered, almost throwing Lin Yi's phone away. Fuck, wasn't this the Killer Kong duo? Pin Liang's eyes widened as he confirmed it a few times. It was definitely one of the Killer Kong duo. Why was he taking a photo with Lin Yi? Pin Liang remembered something abruptly. These were the Killer Diamond duo, and he'd heard that their name was Lin Dongfang and Lin Yi. Holy shit, it couldn't be right. Pin Liang felt the urge to cry. Was he playing with him? He was going against the descendant of the Killer Kong duo. This was practically courting death. He remembered that Lin Dongfang said he'd introduce him to a junior as a follower. Was it that junior Lin Yi? Pingliang's fear of Lin Dongfang was ingrained in his bones. His mind went blank in that instant. He'd forgotten what he was doing. The scene of the Mad Dragon ancestor getting killed by Lin Dongfang in his last life. It was still fresh in his mind. He looked at Pinliang in the dark, but he looked like he was struck by lightning. He stared at his phone blankly, wondering if he'd seen Ming Yao's photo. Are you filled with emotions? All right, everyone has finished reading this mantra, right? Then let's proceed to the next step. Chancellor Nin Tian said lightly. Yes, senior, let's talk about the next part. Kong Ming nodded. The next segment is the opening of the Heavenly Island. The opening of the Heavenly Island was a very difficult task, so the inheritor and the founder needed to work together. All inheritors must have the spirit of giving and sacrificing themselves. They must do their best to help the person who opened the passageway to resist the pressure of true qi that came from the opening of the passageway to Heaven Stage Island. If the inheritor was lazy, then the person who opened it will face unprecedented danger, and all the previous efforts will be in vain. The Heavenly Step Island plan will fail. Chancellor Nin Tian said. Everyone was in an uproar. They didn't expect this plan to be so difficult. Linny frowned. Although he had expected that the inheritor might be in danger when opening the Heavenly Island, he didn't expect that the inheritor would actually play the role of a bodyguard. Wouldn't that be life-threatening? So, in order to ensure the smooth implementation of the plan, in order to make the inheritor willingly sacrifice her life for the person who opened it, we must take a measure. At this point, Chancellor Nin Tian paused for a moment and said, that is, let the person who opened it have intercourse with the 7 inheritors at the same time. I will use a special method to set up a heart-linking lock array. One will prosper, one will perish, one will perish. If there's something wrong with the person who opened it, then all the inheritors will die. On the other hand, if there's something wrong with the inheritor, it won't affect the person who opened it. This is also the reason why the inheritor can maintain her virginity. Once the inheritor loses her virginity because of the person she loves, then this heart-linking lock array will be ineffective. They will only prosper with the person they love, and will not have anything to do with the person who opened it. And the virgin intercourse is the key step of the heart-linking lock array. I don't agree. Lin Yi didn't expect that the inheritor would maintain her virginity for this reason. He was a little angry. Previously, he thought there was something to say, but he didn't expect it to be such a dirty reason. These inheritors were all people closest to him, so how could he possibly agree to this suggestion? Kong Ming and Patriarch Xianxun looked at each other and saw the sneer in each other's eyes. They knew that Lin Yi was going to jump out. Not only did he offend Chancellor Nin Tian, he also offended all the cultivators. Let's see if he can still die. Lin Yi, are you going to destroy the entire inheritance plan for your own selfish desires? Patriarch Xianxun said coldly. You mean that if you don't agree, then Heaven Stage Island won't open? And we don't have to go to Heaven Stage Island. Then, Chancellor Nin Tian came for nothing? Patriarch Xianxun was very sinister. His words directly pushed Lin Yi to the opposite side of all the participating cultivators and Chancellor Nin Tian. Moreover, Lin Yi couldn't refute him. Sure enough, as soon as he said this, the cultivators all glared at Lin Yi. Although everyone was afraid of Lin Yi and didn't dare to say anything, if someone were to make a rallying cry, these people would definitely gang up on him. That's right, Lin Yi, don't be so stingy. I'm just using them. At most, I'll return them to you after Heaven Stage Island opens. Taganlong looked at Lin Yi with a smirk. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Previously, he had always been angry at Lin Yi. Now, he finally had the chance to counterattack. Sleeping with Lin Yi's women was a very satisfying thing, especially since Lin Yi had not lost his virginity to them. Wasn't that equivalent to him being the first? Second-hand was already very satisfying, let alone first-hand. Taganlong kept imagining the wonderful scene of pushing down so many inheritors in his heart. He's the one who opened it. Lin glanced at Tagon Long and asked faintly, "Why can he be the one who opened it? What's so special about him? So others can't open it? Don't say so much useless stuff. He naturally has something special about him to be able to open it." Kong Ming interrupted. "Do you think anyone can open it? If that's the case, there's no need for Sun Jingyi to treat him back then." "Him? What's special about him?" Lin asked. "Tell me, maybe I can open it too." Chapter 35-42. "Oh, is that so? You're no longer needed here." Lin glanced at Tagon Long indifferently, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Without warning, he suddenly attacked. Frenzied Fire, 8 trigrams palm, 15th form. This was the second strongest move that Lin could use now. After continuous breakthroughs, Lin could already use the 15th and 16th forms of the Frenzied Fire, 8 trigrams palm. However, the 15th form, with the bonus of the Essence Necklace's attack level, could instantly kill a peak late-stage heaven-rank perfection expert. Of course, the premise was that the expert was unprepared. Otherwise, even if it was the 16th form with a bonus, it would be difficult to say that it could instantly kill the opponent when the opponent was fully prepared. Boom! Tagon Long screamed as his entire body flew out, smashing a big hole in the wall of the inn. He flew directly out of the inn. You actually killed Tagon Long?" Patriarch Xianshun suddenly stood up, looking at Lin with some shock and disbelief. He never thought that Lin would kill Tagon Long. One had to know that Tagon Long was the pioneer of Heaven Island. Without him, no one would be able to go to Heaven Island. Judging from Lin Yi's previous situation, Lin seemed to be very cooperative with the people who planned to open Heaven Island. So why did he suddenly go berserk and kill someone? Didn't that mean that their cooperation was in vain? Kong Ming and Chancellor Nantian also looked at Lin in disbelief. They never thought that Lin could do such a thing. The power of the move that Lin activated just now had already exceeded the strength of an ordinary peak late-stage heaven-rank perfection expert. Tagon Long did not even need to check to know that he was definitely dead. Even if he wanted to save him, it was impossible. Patriarch Xianshun was a little dumbfounded. All the trial takers present were at a loss as to what to do. "That's it? We can't go to Heaven Island anymore? The pioneer is already dead? Go! Everyone go together. Kill Lin. Get rid of this saboteur." Although Kong Ming was a little regretful that he couldn't go to Heaven Step Island, the problem now was that since he couldn't go, then he would maximize the benefits and let these people get rid of Lin together. Of course, Kong Xiaoming yelled, and everyone was pissed off. Lin knew that Tagon Dragon was the initiator and that he was so important, but he still killed him. He didn't respect the Sky-class Islands plan and the inheritors at all. However, Lin Yi's strength was still there. Who didn't know that the bird that pokes its head out would be shot? These cultivators were able to reach the level of Heaven's stage Great Circle, which one of them was a coward. Their current goal was to ascend to the heavenly Tao, not to fight to the death with others. And so, while Kong Ming's words struck a chord in everyone's hearts, no one dared to make the first move. All of them turned to Pin Liang and Nai Peo. After all, Pin Liang and Zhao Nai Peo were from the Everyday and Everyday sect, and other than the Xinshan Elder, they were the strongest people here. Only if they made a move would the others be able to gang up on them. Nai Peo, of course, looked at Pin Liang. If Pin Liang didn't speak, he wouldn't speak either. At this time, Kong Ming also looked at Pin Liang. Pin Liang had promised at the entrance of the inn that if Lin dared to stop the Heaven Step Island plan, Pin Liang would definitely stand against Lin Yi. Why are you all looking at me? Pin Liang was just in shock and immersed in endless painful memories. He didn't know what was happening in front of him at all. Kong Ming was a little speechless. What were you doing just now, bro? Playing with your phone? Why are you still playing with your phone at a time like this? But he was still hoping that Pin Liang would call for everyone to attack together, so he could only explain patiently. Lin Yi didn't want his woman to have a relationship with the founder of Heaven Step Island, Tagon Long, so he killed Tagon Long. Oh, good kill, Pin Liang said immediately. What? Kong Ming Ming's eyes widened. He looked at Pin Liang in disbelief, thinking that he had heard wrong. Mad Dragon Master, what the hell are you doing? The Xianxun elder frowned and glared at Pin Liang. That wasn't what he said before. They agreed to kill Lin Yi together. Why did he go back on his words? Screw your head. Pin Liang raged. So what if I said it was good kill? If he's not dead, I'll help him. Motherfucker, if he dares to touch Boss Lin Yi's woman, I'll be the first to kill him. Right, pal? Right? Nai Peo paused, but he listened to Pin Liang. He was a little confused, but whatever Pin Liang said was right. If Pin Liang suddenly called Lin Yi his boss, then Lin Yi would naturally be his boss as well. I'll use Wasp Absorption Arts to suck him to death. Kong Ming Ming looked at the two in front of him, dumbfounded. What the hell was going on? Do you think Boss Lin Yi did the right thing? Pin Liang pointed at Lawless Fist, not far from him. Ugh. Yes. Lawless Fist nodded. What about you? You think it's good to kill him? Pin Liang pointed at another foreigner. Good, very good. The foreigner quickly said. And what about you? Pretty girl? Pin Liang looked at Song Ling Rui and asked. He felt that this girl looked familiar, as if he had seen her somewhere before. And I'll go help too. Song Ling Rui nodded. Xianxun, Kong Ming Ming, there's no problem, right? Look, everyone agrees with Boss Lin Yi killing Tagan Dragon. Pin Liang shrugged and said with a smile. The Xianxun ancestor was fuming. This was a sign of everyone rebelling. He turned to Chancellor Nantian. Chancellor Nantian, what do you think? Rebellion. This is rebellion. But I don't care if you don't want to go to Sky Class Island, then I'll go back. The practitioners of the common world are really lowly. What the hell? Chancellor Nantian shook his head. Linny, what are you trying to do? Don't you know how important Tagan Dragon is? The Xianxun ancestor was furious. Although there was still a backup like Tian Chan had 4 solid and 1 void attributes. Although she could barely be replaced, the most important thing was that she was a girl. This was also the flaw of the hidden child that the Xianxun ancestor was worried about. Tian Chan was not related to those inheritors, and those inheritors might not go all out. Even if Tian Chan had a good relationship with Lin Yi, she was not Lin Yi, and the inheritors might not risk their lives to protect her. Chapter 35-43. I know, but it's not irreplaceable. Can't someone else do it? Lin Yi said faintly. Huh, you mean Tian Chan? Tian Chan is a woman and can't use the heart-linking lock formation. How can you guarantee that the inheritors will do their best to protect Tian Chan? Since he couldn't do anything to Lin Yi, and these people, led by Zhong Pingliang, had inexplicably rebelled, he could only take a step back and calmly discuss with Lin Yi. Otherwise, no one would be able to go to Heaven Island. However, the Xianxun Patriarch clearly had a better one. Why did he use the second best one? Previously, Tagan Long was crippled, and he had no choice but to settle for the second best. But now, Tagan Long was fine, but he was killed by Lin Yi. Tian Chan isn't the only 5-element cultivator. In fact, I'm one too. Lin Yi said faintly and began a chant. He compressed a ball of true qi in his hand, but didn't release it. Instead, he switched between the 7 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, mist, and ice. What? The Xianxun Patriarch couldn't help but widen his eyes. He didn't expect that Lin Yi was also a 5-element cultivator. Not only that, but he had 7 elements. He was even more powerful than Tagan Long's 5-element and 5-element cultivators. When the other inheritors saw that Lin Yi was also a 5-element cultivator, they gave up and didn't dare to go against Lin Yi anymore. Anyway, Lin Yi could be the initiator to open Heaven Island. They didn't care about Tagan Long's life or death. In their eyes, it was all the same as long as they could reach Heaven Island. Okay, the Xianxun Patriarch was a little helpless. Although he didn't want to let it go just like that, he thought about it. Tagan Long only played this role, and Lin Yi was the initiator. Those inheritors were all his girlfriends. How could they protect him wholeheartedly? In this way, the chances of opening Heaven Island were greater. It was almost 100%. This was because if the inheritor gave his all and sacrificed himself for the sake of others, the heavenly island wouldn't have failed. Those who failed were those who did not use their full strength. No wonder he's so arrogant. It turns out that he has some capital. Chancellor Nantion looked at Lin and mocked faintly. But on Sky-class Island, all that elemental stuff is useless. Right now, you can only be regarded as laying the foundation for the Qi refining stage. The real highlight is the foundation building stage. Only those who succeeded in building their foundation could be called elites in the Tao of Heaven and step on the path of immortal cultivation. Although you're all cultivators now, you're still mortals. Linny smiled and didn't say anything. Foundation establishment. Linny, are you willing to be the one to activate it? Asked Patriarch Black Earth. Sure. Lin nodded. All right, if that's the case, then it's settled. Chancellor Nantion, please continue the topic of the meeting. Patriarch Xinshen said. All right, when the heavenly island was opened, I'll guide you personally. When I say charge, everyone will charge toward the entrance. If you're too slow, don't blame me if you can't get through. Chancellor Nantion paused for a moment before continuing. There's one last important thing. That is, when you go to the Heaven Stage Island, it's best to let your friends and family send you off. If you want to come back after going to the Heaven Stage Island, could it be that I can't return to the secular world after going there? Lin, he was slightly shocked and asked. You can definitely come back this time. How can you not come back? Only a retarded itinerant cultivator like you would ask such a retarded question. Chancellor Nantion mocked and said, however, with my strength, I can only make my primordial spirit clone come back under the effect of a secret technique. If I want my main body to come back, my strength isn't enough. Everyone came to a realization. It wasn't that they couldn't come back, but that those who weren't almighty couldn't come back. And those who could come back probably didn't have any friends or family left in the secular world. There was no reason for them to come back. Then, Master Zhang Liju, can he come back? Linny asked after some thought. Of course. What kind of power is Master Zhang Liju? Of course he can come back. Ignorant. Chancellor Nantion humphed. Lin nodded and breathed a sigh of relief. The cauldron in the tomb was most likely taken away by Zhang Liju when he remembered it. All right, I've said what I need to say. Everyone prepare yourself. Tell your friends and family to send you off. Tomorrow night, the Heaven Stage Island will officially open. Yes, everyone was shivering after hearing this, but they were also filled with excitement. After all, the path to the heavenly Tao was right in front of them. The crowd dispersed, and Lin Yi, Han Jingjing, and Xin Yan went back to their rooms. Chancellor Nantion went to continue his lecture with the heirs. Lin Yi sighed and decided to let Ling Shan, Sun Jingyi, Shirhan, Cheng Yi, Ziyu, and Tianqi send them off. Wu Qintian, Pai Jishan, Pai Jihai, and the other henchmen would come to send Lin Yi off as well. The heirs all came back and gathered in Lin Yi's room. Meng Yao called Ping Zhan and Yi Weiner, telling them that they would be leaving tomorrow, but with a master like Lin Yi protecting them, it should be fine. Yu Shu called Chen Yutian. As for the hidden house Yu, she automatically ignored them. Tang Yun, on the other hand, called her parents, and so did Xiao Xiao. Her mom, Xiao Su Su, had woken up, and the poison in her body had been absorbed by Xiao Xiao as well. Xiao Xiao didn't have anything to worry about anymore. Yu Ning, on the other hand, called Yu Bing and House Yu, mentioning Shu's matter. Guan Xian, on the other hand, called Guan Shuamin and Boss Bai. Little Jiu, on the other hand, called Yang Chi Chi. Everything had been arranged properly, and everyone went to rest early. Tomorrow was an important day. Lin Yi, on the other hand, couldn't fall asleep for a long time. Xin Yan and Han Jingjing lay beside him. Tonight, Lin Yi wanted to test out that creation's art of Heaven's Path Foundation's chant. Although Chancellor Nantion had previously mentioned that there was a Vice Island Lord called Tianxing who cultivated the creation battle art on the Heavenly Stage Island. However, due to the incomplete mantra, he ended up going berserk. But just from the fact that he was able to become the Vice Island Master after practicing the Fortune-type battle arts, one could tell that the strength of the Fortune-type battle arts was quite strong. However, it was likely that it would be lacking in strength in the future. When it reached a higher realm, the flaws would become greater and greater, and Tianxing had unfortunately gone mad. Chapter 35-44. At the very least, when the will of heaven became the Vice Island Master, he couldn't have just started cultivating, right? He must have cultivated for a long time and possessed great strength. Therefore, in this case, only the will of heaven had cultivated this mantra for so long. The others couldn't even cultivate this. And Lin, he wanted to give it a try. Of course, Lin, he didn't want to force it like the will of heaven, but he wanted to combine the creation battle art and the fourth stage mantra of the art of dragon mastery into one. The fourth stage of the art of dragon mastery was a mantra to assist in breaking through the heavenly Tao. If the two were combined, with the art of dragon mastery as the main and the creation battle art as the supplementary, and the omnipotent mantra obtained from the third stone door as the thread to form a new mantra, wouldn't it be a complete mantra? With the previous experience of combining martial arts, Lin, he didn't think there was anything wrong with the martial arts he combined. It could be upgraded along the way, and its power was limitless. Therefore, it seemed that there shouldn't be any problems with the combined mantra. Therefore, Lin Yi did what he thought. After entering the space of the jade pendant, he began to use the omnipotent mantra to recombine the two mantra. Taking a deep breath, Lin Yi began to try the omnipotent mantra, then began to chant the fourth stage of the art of dragon mastery, seizing the heavens and the creation battle art that Chancellor Nantian gave him. These two mantra kept alternating in Lin Yi's mind, interspersed with the mantra of the omnipotent mantra. And from the beginning, Lin Yi recited it. It turned into the contents of the two mantra, automatically circling around in Lin Yi's mind. Then, the order of the mantra began to get messy, and the two mantra slowly recombined, merging into a complete new mantra. Although Lin Yi already knew that these things from the Xinyuan cave abode weren't ordinary, he was still shocked at this time. This was the rhythm of being able to create his own mantra, and this newly fused mental cultivation method mnemonic formula. It was as if it had been imprinted in Lin Yi's mind, making Lin Yi unable to forget it even if he wanted to. What surprised Lin Yi the most was that this newly fused practitioner's chant could be used as two parts of the practitioner's chant. This was quite a rare thing. If one were to cultivate it properly, the art of dragon mastery would be the main force, and the creation battle art would be the support. The reverse way of cultivating was to use the art of dragon mastery as a supplement, with the art of dragon mastery as a guide. However, Lin Yi was definitely going to cultivate. After all, his foundation was the art of dragon mastery, and the art of dragon mastery was a heaven-defying mantra. Lin Yi naturally couldn't put the cart before the horse and give up his original advantage. Lin Yi named this brand new mantra Heaven's Fortune Battle Art before he calmed his excitement and joy. He began to cultivate in the space of the jade pendant. It was better to break through the way of heaven as soon as possible. No matter how good the mantra was, it would only be effective after cultivation. Since he already had a way to break through the way of heaven and become a foundation establishment expert, Lin Yi was determined not to waste time. The heavenly island was full of unknown dangers. Therefore, it was better for Lin Yi to improve his strength as soon as possible. Taking a deep breath, Lin Yi slowly calmed his mind and concentrated and began to circulate this brand new mantra. All the qi in his body began to move, and it flowed along Lin Yi's meridians. Suddenly, Lin Yi felt as if his body and meridians were about to explode. This mantra didn't seem to be something that Lin Yi could control with his current strength. This kind of pain made even a heaven stage great perfection expert like Lin Yi feel a little unbearable. Lin Yi thought that his endurance was strong enough, but at this moment, he couldn't help but feel like he was about to die. However, the process of cultivation was an extremely long process. Even if it was incomparably painful, Lin Yi could only continue. He didn't think that there would be any problems with this mantra. After all, it was converted from the omnipotent mantra. It was just that the process was too torturous. This kind of pain lasted for a full hour. At this moment, Lin he was in so much pain that he was sweating profusely. Finally, the pain gradually weakened. Just when Linny thought that he had adapted to this brand new mantra and could breathe a sigh of relief, his body suddenly shook violently. Chapter 35:45. His entire person seemed to have changed. The Lin Yi at this moment felt like he was on a completely different level from before. It was as if he was looking down on all the other mountains, as if he was already standing on the peak in some sense. Was this the heavenly Tao? Was this foundation establishment? Lin Yi felt that even if he faced a heaven-rank great perfection expert, he could still easily kill him. There was no need for the sneak attacks and instant kills from before. This was the difference in absolute strength. Phew! Lin Yi heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly continued to circulate the mantra to consolidate his strength. Lin Yi discovered that ever since Wang Xinyan advanced to the sky rank, she had been giving him a lot of benefits. The energy provided had become even stronger. The night passed uneventfully. Lin Yi didn't tell anyone that he had stepped into the heavenly Tao. Lin Yi didn't want to publicize this because he would become the target of public criticism. The next morning, Lin Yi was talking with the girls when Zhong Pingliang came looking for him. Pingliang had supported Lin Yi yesterday, and while Lin Yi was surprised, he thought that Pingliang was doing this because he'd helped Nai Peo. His attitude wasn't too good either, though. After all, Pingliang had already returned the favor, so they were still enemies. Zhong Pingliang, what are you doing here? Lin Yi asked faintly. Boss Lin Yi, I'm just showing my loyalty to you, aren't I? I admire you a lot. Pow, call him boss. Pingliang said. Boss Lin Yi, please accept this little brother's bow. Nai Peo, on the other hand, was completely convinced by Lin Yi. If Pingliang asked him to call Lin Yi his boss, he'd do it, but he wouldn't do it willingly. However, Lin Yi had helped Nai Peo before, and Nai Peo was grateful for that. Now that Pingliang was asking him to do this, it made perfect sense. Plus, Nai Peo knew the reason. Therefore, he was not surprised. What are you two doing? Is there something wrong with him? Lin Yi looked at Pingliang curiously. Oh, Liangzi, you thought it through? Was he finally going to be Shield Bro's lackey? I told you a long time ago that you wanted to be Shield Bro's follower. Look, you've finally become one. Yushu said proudly. Not bad, Sister Shu. Please take care of me in the future. Pingliang had lost all will to resist ever since he knew who Lin Yi was. Zhong Pingliang, are you serious? Lin Yi realized that Zhong Pingliang didn't seem to be joking. Of course not. I'm sincere. Furthermore, I promised Hero Lin of the Twin Vajra that I would be his junior's follower. Young Master Lin is Master Lin's descendant, so of course I have to call you boss. Pingliang explained. Vajra double killer Lin? Who are you talking about? Lin Yi was baffled. Lin Dongfang, Master Lin. Pingliang paused. Could it be that Lin Yi didn't know about Lin Dongfang's past? But now that he thought about it, it was possible. Who would dare go against Lin Yi after all? That would be suicide. Lin Dongfang? Old man? My grandpa? Lin Yi was surprised. Yes. Pingliang was sure that Lin Yi didn't know. Then do you know the other Vajra double killer Yang? Master Yang? Who? My Master Yang Ming? Lin Yi paused. Master Yang is Boss Lin Yi's master. No wonder Boss Lin Yi is so powerful. Pingliang was shocked. He was shocked enough that Lin Dongfang was Lin Yi's master, but Yang Ming was Lin Yi's master. This background was enough to kill everyone. At this moment, Pingliang decided that he would follow Lin Yi for the rest of his life. As far as he was concerned, Lin Dongfang and Yang Ming were so powerful back then, so their inheritors shouldn't be too shabby. Sky-class Island was full of unknown dangers, and he couldn't do it without a backer. So Pingliang felt that following Lin Yi would be good. So, they are the Vajra double killer Yang. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. He had heard about how powerful the Vajra double killer Yang were, but he didn't expect them to be the two closest to him. That was it. His master had left with those Sky-class masters, but where did they go? Sky-class Island? Or was there another place? It wasn't hard for Lin Yi to understand why Pingliang was behaving like this. Pinliang's original body, the Mad Dragon Master, was killed by Lin Dongfang all those years ago. It made sense for him to be afraid of Lin Dongfang. As for why Pinliang knew about this, it was probably because he saw the background photo on his phone yesterday. However, Lin wasn't very confident in Pinliang, but it was good to have such a follower on Sky Class Island. So he said, if that's the case, then follow me from now on. However, I also want to test you. If you're useless, why would I take you in? Okay. Pinliang nodded quickly and said, I'll definitely be useful. Even if I'm useless, I can still be a spy. Well, let's see your performance then. Lin nodded. Pinliang said goodbye, and Lin and the others rested for a while. Wu Qintian and the others also took a few cars to the inn, and the other participants and inheritors' friends also gradually came to see everyone off. Around 6 o'clock that night, the Xinshan ancestor was below the inn and shouted, all participants and inheritors, please pay attention. 5 Elements Sect is now making an important announcement. Sky Class Island will open tonight at 11:45. All participants and inheritors, please gather at the inn square immediately and head to Sky Class Island. This moment was finally coming. Lin, he was very excited. He brought the girls downstairs, and the other participants also went downstairs one by one and came to the empty square behind the inn. In the square, there were also the relatives and friends of the participants and inheritors, and the Xinshan ancestor had found a full 5 buses from somewhere. Kong Ming and Tian Chan were organizing the participants and inheritors, as well as their relatives and friends, to get on the buses one by one. This feeling was like going to a certain place for a vacation, but in fact, it wasn't. As for the cars and luggage of the trial takers and inheritors, they would be taken away by the relatives and friends of the trial takers and inheritors when they returned. The Xuanjin ancestor of the 5 Elements Sect also came. The Xinshan ancestor didn't go to Sky Class Island, but chose to stay in the 5 Elements Sect. The 5 Elements Sect in the mortal world also needed someone to oversee it. Chapter 35:46. When Lin went back, he also suggested that Boss Bai should increase his strength, but Boss Bai refused. His next step was to wait for Bai Wei Tuo, and he Mei Wei to give him a great-grandson and enjoy the happiness of a family at home. He didn't want to get involved in the disputes between sects. Naturally, Lin would take care of this. As long as Elder Xinshan wasn't in charge of the 5 Elements Sect, he would be at ease. The 5 cars started slowly and headed towards the place where the island would appear. It was the west side of the 5 Elements Sect, in the direction of the Endless West Sea. The Endless West Sea wasn't far from the 5 Elements Sect. After about an hour's drive, everyone arrived at the shore of the Endless West Sea. Everyone got off the car, and Elder Xinshan and Chancellor Nantian called Yu Ning and Yu Shu to the side. According to what they said before, they roughly confirmed the location and specific time of the island's appearance. As for the others, it was time for them to bid farewell to their family and friends. Lin Yi and his followers sat in a bus. The entire bus was filled with Lin Yi's people, and there were still a lot of people standing. When they came, they took 2 buses. Boss, I brought Skybolt Pig too. You drive it to the island. Do you want to bring it along? Wu Qintian said. He followed Lin Yi's orders and brought everything that could be brought from Lin Yi's villa. He also prepared some daily necessities like a phone, a computer, a solar charger, and so on. God knew what was on the island. Okay. Lin, he casually put those things into the jade space. Skybolt Pig, on the other hand, made things difficult for him. How was he going to bring this little guy over? One had to know that when going to the island, although the inheritor and the originator had to work together to open a path, practitioners who were too weak couldn't go through. The same was true for spirit beasts. Any practitioner below the peak of Sky Class couldn't go through the path. They definitely couldn't pass through the passageway. Even with the inheritor, the opener, and Naipeo working together to defend against the aura, the leftover power was still quite strong. Thus, those who were too weak will be directly crushed to death by the pressure. Even if they were at the peak of the late stage of the heaven rank, if they hadn't reached the great perfection of the heaven rank, they would still be suffocated by the pressure. Only great perfection, heaven-rank powerhouses could safely pass through. To be honest, Lin Yi went to Heaven Island. He wanted to bring the Skybolt pig along, but how to bring it along was a rather complicated problem. Idiot Lin Yi, can't you put the Skybolt pig into the space of the jade pendant you refined? Suddenly, Jiao Yazi's voice sounded in Lin Yi's ears. The space within the jade pendant. Lin Yi was slightly taken aback. I thought the space within the jade pendant couldn't contain living things? How can Skybolt pig enter? That was before, not now. Elder Jiao said, you can put the Skybolt pig into the space in the jade pendant you refined. There won't be a problem. I won't die. Oh, then can Tang Yin and I enter as well? Lin Yi was slightly taken aback as he asked. You can't for the time being. Humans can only use their primordial spirits to enter. Jiao Lao said, perhaps this function can be realized. Next time, isn't the stone door the end of it? There's nothing left. I don't have the refining method either. Lin Yi was a little puzzled. When you enter the Heaven Rank Island through the passage to the mortal world, that pressure is something that my avatar can't withstand. At that time, I might not be able to wake up from my long slumber. Also, on the Heaven Rank Island, I might not be able to contact my main body. Even if I don't sleep, I won't be able to connect with my main body. I won't be able to function normally. Jiao Lao said, I see. Lin Yi suddenly felt a little sad. He had been accompanied by Jiao Lao this whole time. Was Jiao Lao about to leave? All right, Elder Jiao said, there's a limit to how much help I can provide. I won't be able to keep doing this forever. When I go into hibernation, or when I lose contact with my true self, I'll send the mnemonic chant and some other things I know into your mind. Once you've reached a certain level of strength, the memories will automatically be unsealed and appear in your mind. All right, Lin Yi nodded and said firmly, Boss Lin Yi, are you going to bring it or not? Shintian saw that Lin Yi was silent and was confused. He didn't know that Lin Yi was talking to Jiao Yazi in the space of the jade pendant. Bring it, Lin Yi said and picked up Skybolt pig. Skybolt pig disappeared into the space of the jade pendant. After entering, Lin Yi took a look and found that Skybolt pig was still alive. There were no problems, and the little guy seemed to like the space of the jade pendant. The chi here was extremely rich, and Skybolt pig loved it the most. It danced happily in the space of the jade pendant. It was in high spirits. Huh, Boss Lin Yi, where did those things in Skybolt pig go? Shintian was confused. Oh, I have a storage bag just like Doraemon's, Lin Yi said. Oh, okay. Shintian nodded and didn't ask. As far as he was concerned, Lin Yi had done too many miraculous things. This was nothing. After chatting with the people present, it was time for Lin Yi to leave. The Xiantian ancestor had already sent out a signal. Inheritors, practitioners, gather quickly. Other than the family and friends who had the Xuanjin ancestor in charge of maintaining order in the common world, the other inheritors and practitioners all gathered beside the Xiantian ancestor. Yuning, Yushu, take the main position behind the 8 trigrams. The Xiantian ancestor said, I'm too tired, wait a bit. Yushu said lazily, Sky-class island will only appear at midnight. What's the rush? That's right, I'm so tired. Let's all rest first. Meng Yao was naturally on the same side as Yushu. Stop bullshitting. You're still throwing a tantrum at a time like this. Hurry up and get ready to open the island's seal. The Xiantian ancestor was panicking. This Yushu was really hard to deal with, dropping the ball at such a critical moment. You're so fierce when not opening it. Lin Yi honey, hurry up and get us some herbal tea. Our throats are burning. Xiao Xiao jumped out. Yeah. The scenery here is really good. Chill, bro, let's camp here. Liang Yi, help me hold up the tent, Yushu said with a smile. Chapter 35:47. Fuck, I'm begging you guys, after we open the island, you guys can do whatever you want, just don't mess around here, okay? Kong Ming Ming turned his head and dodged. He didn't think that these people would still do something like this when they were on the island. What made him even more curious was why Pin Liang was betraying them. He had to find a chance to ask him about it. This wasn't right. Pin Liang was supposed to be on his side. He didn't understand. There's no use begging me. Go beg Shield Bro. Shu only listens to Shield Bro, Yushu said. Fuck. Kong Ming Ming didn't know what to do. He had just completely fallen out with Lin Yi, and now he had to beg Lin Yi? This made him very depressed, but there was nothing he could do. He sighed and walked to Lin Yi, who was standing there quietly. Lin Yi boss, you're the one who opened the island. Hurry up and give the order. Sky-class island is about to appear. Oh, no rush. Lin Yi took a deep breath and came out of the jade space. While no one was bothering him, he entered the jade space with his soul, planning to see if he could increase Skybolt Pig's strength to Sky-class late phase peak perfection. After all, when he was at Sky rank full cycle, he could only increase the strength of humans and spirit beasts to the peak of late Earth rank. Cultivators could use Chi gathering pills to advance to Sky rank full cycle, but not spirit beasts. The effect of Chi gathering pills for spirit beasts was negligible. Skybolt Pig entered the jade space, but Lin Yi was still worried that something might happen to him. Lin Yi was counting on Skybolt Pig to reunite with Zhang Liju. Otherwise, who would know who you were? You couldn't just say whatever you wanted. The notes of a refiner could be stolen, but Skybolt Pig couldn't. If Skybolt Pig didn't like you, then he didn't like you. If he complained to Zhang Liju might just slap you to death. And so, Lin Yi wanted to see if he could increase Skybolt Pig's strength. Of course, Lin Yi didn't plan on increasing Skybolt Pig's strength in front of everyone. Even if the people in the car were all his lackeys, spiritual energy would gather when spirit beasts leveled up. Xianchen Elder and the others were all Sky-class full perfection masters, and they weren't idiots. They couldn't possibly not feel the energy gathering in the car. If they found out that Skybolt Pig leveled up, they would be asking for trouble. Lin Yi didn't want others to know that he was already a Sky-class early phase master. Lin Yi could only increase his lackeys to Earth class when he was at Skybolt Pig. It wasn't a big secret, and anyone could find out about it if they wanted to. But Lin Yi was able to raise the pig's strength with his bare hands right now. It would be weird if there weren't any problems. Previously, Lin Yi had to use Chi gathering pills to help his followers reach perfection, but now he didn't need to. Most practitioners knew that spirit beasts couldn't level up by eating pills. So, Lin Yi decided to secretly test it in the jade space. Skybolt Pig's main body was also in the jade space. Even if he leveled up, there wouldn't be any spiritual energy gathering outside. Lin Yi's soul entered the jade space and went into the space where Skybolt Pig was and started to level up. After the transformation of the jade space, only Lin Yi's soul could go back and forth. Tang Yun couldn't feel the existence of the other space, and she could only enter the main space. What surprised Lin Yi was that his golden finger was still working, and Skybolt Pig's strength was increased to Sky-class late phase peak full perfection. Especially the new Xinyuan art of Dragon Mastery and the Creation Battle art to form the new art of Dragon Mastery. The speed of improvement was even faster, and within half an hour, Skybolt Pig had become a Sky-class full perfection spirit beast. Boss Lin Yi, let's start, or else it'll be too late, Kong Ming Ming said with a bitter face. Okay, everyone get ready. Lin Yi had to walk over at this time. Heaven Island couldn't be delayed, and Lin Yi had to go, or else he would have to accompany them. Lin Yi walked over, and the inheritors started to get ready. This made Ancestor Xianchen a little helpless. Suddenly, Lin Yi became the leader. In fact, with Lin Yi's current situation, Ancestor Xianchen definitely wouldn't dare to stop his Heaven-class full perfection disciples from going to Heaven Island. It was just that most of Lin Yi's disciples were from ordinary families and hidden families. They hadn't set foot on the ancient level, so they didn't have such a pressing pursuit of the heavenly Tao. To them, Heaven-class full perfection was already very satisfying. Their thoughts were still in the realm of the secular world, and they were unwilling to leave. Their goal was to revitalize their families. Yu Ning, Yu Shu, take the main position behind the 8 trigrams. Ancestor Xianchen spoke again. Yu Ning and Yu Shu, on the other hand, obediently stood in the position of the 8 trigrams. Lin, hero Lin, stand in the center of the 8 trigrams. Ancestor Xianxian continued. Lin nodded and took the center of the 8 trigrams. After him, Meng Yao, Xiao Xiao, Tang Yun, Guan Xian, and Little Nine stood in their respective positions. Zhang Naipeo, on the other hand, stood at the very front of the 8 trigrams, facing the endless West Sea, because he was in charge of blocking the most ferocious 5 malice demonic chi. Of course, the 5 malice demonic chi might have a huge side effect on a weakling like Tagon Long, but it didn't affect Lin Yi that much. However, the 5 malice chi and the power of the 5 elements and 7 elements were pressing down on Lin Yi at the same time. Most importantly, Lin Yi didn't seem to be able to circulate his practitioner's arts to defend against the pressure. He had to do something. Heirs, prepare yourselves. Chancellor Nan Tian spoke. Heaven-class island is about to appear. Chancellor Nan Tian's words made everyone's heart tighten. Everyone's expression turned solemn. On the originally calm surface of the sea, the heaven and earth spiritual chi began to gather gradually, and the waves began to surge violently. In just an instant, the energy above the sea surface became more and more violent, and the sea turned into raging waves. Yu Ning, Yu Shu quickly determined the specific location of Heaven-class Island. Chancellor Nantian suddenly spoke loudly. The energy is gathering. Heaven-class Island is about to appear. Chapter 35-48. As soon as their voices fell, everyone turned to look in that direction. As expected, 30 degrees to the northeast, the energy of heaven and earth was the most violent. The wind howled and the waves surged. Although they couldn't see where the island was, it was good to know the direction. All inheritors, please get ready. The 5 elements and 5 malevolent energies will arrive at any time. Although Chancellor Nantian hated Lin Yi, he couldn't let him die. If he died, then no one would be able to go to the island, and he wouldn't be able to bring his new follower, the Xianxian ancestor. In the distance, the other challengers furrowed their brows as they watched the scene unfold before them anxiously. The power of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was far too great, far beyond their imaginations. At this moment, it was as if the whole world was shaking because of the appearance of the island. This situation lasted for about half an hour, and the violent heaven and earth spiritual chi seemed to become more and more violent. 30 degrees to the northeast, a white misty area gradually appeared. No one knew what it was, but everyone was very excited. Perhaps this was the legendary Heavenly Island. The island has appeared. All participants, get ready to land on the island. Chancellor Nan Tian shouted. The participants were excited, but they didn't dare to breathe too loudly, nor did they dare to cheer. All of them looked at the scene in front of them nervously, waiting for Chancellor Nan Tian's next order. The ground under their feet began to shake along with the violent energy of heaven and earth, and the waves became more and more turbulent, reaching tens of meters in height. That misty white area tugged at everyone's hearts. Suddenly, that white area on the surface of the sea suddenly shot out colorful rays of light. If one looked closely, they would be able to see colorful rays of light. If one looked closely, it was actually 7 colors, and there was a black glow. This should be the light of the 5 elements and 7 elements, and the black was the 5 malevolent energies. Everyone was very nervous at this moment. They stared at the white area without blinking. Was this the legendary Heavenly Island? The pressure is about to be activated. Inheritors and Zhang Naipeo, please protect the person who activated it. Chancellor Nan Tian shouted. As soon as he finished speaking, an intense and dazzling light shot out from Heaven Stage Island. Everyone's eyes were temporarily blinded. They were all at the great perfection of the heaven rank. Normally, even if they were stimulated by intense light, their vision wouldn't be affected. But this time, their eyes couldn't see anything, and even their perception was blinded. These inheritors were good too. Never had they imagined that in this world, there would be such a dazzling light that they could not see anything at all. However, compared to the others, Lin Yi could sense the situation outside from the space of the jade pendant. However, no one knew when the white area had started to gradually approach the sea, or rather, they had been very close before. It was just that because of the light and shadow, everyone felt that it was very far away. As the intense light burst forth, the boundless might of the 5 elements and 7 attributes, as well as the might of the 5 evil chi, was suddenly released and swept towards the coast. Hurry up and circulate the mantra to defend. Chancellor Nan Tian yelled. The pressure had already been fully concentrated on him. The inheritors and Zhang Naipeo didn't dare delay, hurriedly activating their mantras to defend against this torrential pressure. At this moment, there was a suffocating feeling. Zhang Naipeo was absorbing the 5 evils chi, and he was probably the one who was having the easiest time here. Although he kept on absorbing, he was having an easier time than the other inheritors. The power of the pressure was unbearable, making it hard for them to breathe. However, the inheritors all knew their own mission. If the one in the middle was tagging along, they might not be working so hard, but the one in the middle was Lin Yi, the man they loved deeply, the man they would give up their lives for. And so all the inheritors gritted their teeth and held on. Beads of sweat rolled down from the foreheads of the inheritors. Lin Yi saw it all, and his heart ached, but there was nothing he could do. There was nothing he could do here. He had a mission to fulfill. As the pressure was released, the Sky Tier Island, which had been faintly discernible, gradually became clearer. Through the multicolored light, a huge white island appeared before everyone's eyes. It was as if the island was so far away, yet so close at the same time. However, this island seemed to have appeared out of thin air, because when they arrived, there was nothing on the calm surface of the sea. Fourth dimensional space? Jiao Lao's voice rang in Lin Yi's ears. Sky-grade island is hidden in a fourth dimensional space. Fourth dimensional space? Lin Yi paused. That's right, it's similar to the Jade space. Sky-grade island is a fourth dimensional space hidden in the endless West Sea. No wonder with our current technology, we can't find this island the size of a small country. Jiao Lao said. I see. Lin Yi understood. The Jade space couldn't be found by normal people, right? But in this case, not everyone could enter and exit Sky-grade island. No wonder they had to use an array to open the seal. Pioneer, pay attention, your mission is coming. Just as Lin Yi and Jiao Lao were sighing, Chancellor Nantian's voice rang out, get ready. When the light beam channel opens, step onto the light beam channel and open Sky-grade island. Light beam channel. Lin Yi was slightly stunned, but in the next moment he saw a light beam shoot into the middle of the 8 trigrams array, where Lin Yi was standing. Quickly enter the light beam and open the seal. Chancellor Nan Tian shouted. Lin Yi was slightly stunned. He was surprised to find that the light beam was actually a physical object, which meant that he could walk on the light beam. Thinking of this, Lin Yi didn't dare to delay. He quickly stepped onto the light beam and walked forward. However, the pressure around him made it difficult for Lin Yi to balance. However, he didn't dare to divert his attention to resist the pressure, because the light beam was in the shape of a cylinder and the surface was extremely smooth. If Lin Yi was distracted, he would fall. Inheritor, hurry up and circulate the mantra. Otherwise, Lin Yi will be in great danger. The pressure above will concentrate on him and turn him into pieces. Patriarch Xianchen roared. He said this to threaten the inheritor to do their best. Chapter 35-49. Lin Yi followed the light pillar and carefully climbed to the top. At the top, Lin Yi saw something that looked like a rotating 5-pointed star. It was this thing that was constantly emitting 5-colored light. Initiator, place your hands on it and chant the mantra. Chancellor Nantian said loudly. Lin Yi followed the instructions and placed his hands on the rotating 5-pointed star. Only then did he realize that the five-pointed star wasn't in a physical state, but an illusion. However, regardless of what it was, Lin Yi quickly began to chant the mantra. When Lin Yi began to chant the mantra, there seemed to be some kind of force pushing Heaven Level Island. Heaven Level Island, which was originally half submerged in the sea, suddenly rose from the sea and became bigger and bigger. Finally, at the edge of the coastline, a passageway array formation suddenly appeared. It was just like the array formation that led everyone to the Five Fiends Wilderness and the Five Fiends Mountain Range. At this moment, Lin Yi finally understood that this passageway was opened by the power of the five elements. Something seemed to be hinting to him that if he stopped chanting the mantra, this passageway would disappear. At this moment, Lin Yi wanted to jump down and quickly rush into the passageway with the inheritors. However, Lin Yi helplessly realized that his hands seemed to be glued to something. He couldn't pull them back at all. This feeling was the same as when he was at the stone door of the cave. It made him unable to extricate himself. Just as he thought of retreating, a voice seemed to be hinting to him that this was his mission. The initiator had to persist until the last moment. Only at the last moment could they enter the passageway of Heaven Level Island. They were burning themselves to help the other cultivators who wanted to enter the island. This was their mission. It turned out that being an initiator wasn't a good job. That silly tag-along was still very proud of himself. However, Lin Yi didn't regret it. After all, he had to do this for the sake of the inheritors. Lin Yi could feel the exhaustion of the inheritors. If they didn't give it their all, they wouldn't be able to survive. That coercion would fall on Lin Yi's body, and it was hard to say whether Lin Yi could be killed by the coercion, but the opening of the heavenly island would definitely stop. The passageway has appeared. The trial takers are beginning to ascend the island. Xinshen, follow me first. With that, Chancellor Nantian took the lead and charged into the passageway, and Patriarch Xinshan followed closely behind. Immediately after, Kong Ming and the other trial takers also entered the tunnel one by one according to the order they had lined up. They could also see that the inheritor was trembling and probably wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. We need to get to the island as soon as possible. Tian Chan, Song Ling Rui, Rock Candy, Sydney, Wang Xinyan, Han Jingjing, Xiao Ran, Zhong Pingliang, and the others were very worried about Lin Yi and the inheritors, but they had to enter the passageway according to the order. They could only pray that Lin Yi and the others could enter the passageway successfully in the end. However, when everyone entered the passageway, Guan Xian suddenly couldn't hold on anymore. Her body swayed, and she directly fell to the ground. Guan Xian was one of the inheritors, the woman with the weakest foundation. Following closely behind was Little Nine, and behind her, Meng Yao, Yushu Yuning, Tang Yun, and Xiao Xiao also fell to the ground one by one. It seemed that they couldn't hold on anymore and also fainted on the spot. Once they fainted, the coercion on Lin Yi's side suddenly increased, and a huge majestic force directly pressed him down from the light pillar. Lin Yi fell into the sea. This shocked Lin Yi, but he was worried about the inheritors. He wanted to see how Meng Yao and the others were doing. But what shocked Lin was that after he left the light pillar, the passageway of the island actually became more and more illusory, and the entire island began to sink again. The entire heavenly stage island began to sink again. Lin Yi panicked. At this moment, he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. He knew that after he left, the passageway of the island would disappear. If he quickened his pace, he could go in. But what about Meng Yao and the others? Even if Lin Yi ran over and saved one of them, he couldn't save a second one. After all, the 8 trigrams formation was very big, and each inheritor was very far away from each other. It would be very difficult for Lin Yi to save one and come back. Take care of them for me. Wait for me to come back. Lin Yi yelled to his lackeys and quickly flew into the passageway. He had to go to Sky Class Island. Meng Yao and the others didn't seem to be much of a problem. Lin Yi could at least sense their life force, and so he asked his lackeys to bring them back. Lingshan, Sun Jingyi, Shirhan, Cheng Yi, Ziyu, and the others all rushed over. And this was the last scene Lenny saw. Naipeo hesitated for a bit before following, but the path was already starting to flicker. Whether or not he'd be able to reach Sky-class Island was up to luck now. Yao Yao, Shu, Tang Yin, Xiao Xiao, Yining, Guan, X, and Jiu. Wait for me to come back. Lenny sighed. He thought that they would be his biggest helpers on Sky-class Island, but they fainted all of a sudden. The last scene Lin Yi saw was them fainting around the 8 trigrams formation, and with a flash of white light, the passageway disappeared, and so did Naipeo. Lin Yi and the others all disappeared under the white light. The only thing that made Linny feel at ease was that his lackeys and the women he left behind were all top-level practitioners, Sky-class late-phase peak. They were the strongest in the common world. With them, Lenny didn't need to worry about Yao Yao and the others. After entering the passageway, Lin Yi suddenly felt like he'd entered an illusory space, and then his eyes lit up. In front of him was a white light, and Lin Yi was temporarily blinded. Lin Yi subconsciously closed his eyes and entered the jade space, activating his spiritual sense to sense his surroundings. But what disappointed Lin Yi was that there was only white light around him, and there was nothing else. It was like a strange space, and Lin Yi couldn't even see his companions or enemies. His feet, on the other hand, seemed to be floating in midair, unable to step on anything. It was like he was in a weightless state. Since he was already here, Lin Yi knew that there was nothing he could do right now. He could only wait quietly. Chapter 3550. Lin Yi opened his eyes and saw a bare high platform. And standing on a high platform, there was not only Lin Yi, but also Kong Ming Ming, Zhong Pingliang, Dong Fambadeo, Unfathomable Fist, and Xiao Ran. In addition, there were no other participants, only 6 people. Of course, apart from Unfathomable Fist and Xiao Ran, who were not particularly familiar with Lin Yi. Among them, only Kong Ming Ming and Dong Fambadeo had a big grudge against Lin Yi. Zhong Pingliang, Lin Yi's current underling, was considered an ally, but where were the others? Tian Chan, Song Ling Rue, Zhang Naipeo, Xinshan Ancestor? Where's the snow pair with rock sugar? Wang Xinyan and Han Jingjing? They all disappeared together in the teleportation channel in front of the Heavenly Island. How did they all disappear? However, the high platform where Lin Yi was now was surrounded by cliffs, and there were no obstacles on it. It was clear at a glance how many people were here, and there was no room to hide. What kind of fucking place is this? This is Heavenly Island? Why is there nothing? Kong Ming Ming came back to his senses and couldn't help but curse. Damn, are we being cheated? Boss Lenny, what do you think? Zhong Pingliang was also a little puzzled. Was this Heavenly Island? But there was nothing on this island. How could it be called Heavenly Island? Also, where did Zhang Naipeo go? The chi of heaven and earth here is very abundant, but we are alone here. I don't see any sex or people. This is very strange. Lin Yi had never been to Heavenly Island, so this place made Lin Yi a little puzzled. Before, everyone imagined how beautiful Heavenly Island was, and there were many masters on it, helping everyone to break through the Heavenly Tao. But now, not to mention masters, there was only a cliff. There was nothing, so how could they deal with it? He looked into the distance again. The platform was surrounded by white mist. It was impossible to see anything in the distance. The only thing that could be clearly seen was that below the platform was a cliff that was tens of thousands of feet high. Moreover, it was so deep that one couldn't see the bottom of it. Further down, the fog was too thick to see. Dong Fambadeo was one of the most active people. When he came here, he found that it was different from what he imagined, and other people didn't know where to go. And suddenly 3/4 of the people were missing. Who would be happy in such a situation? Could it be that when those people came over, they didn't stand firmly on the high platform and fell directly into the cliff? Thinking of this, everyone broke out in a cold sweat. But after calming down, Lin Yi wasn't as naive as he thought. Lin Yi felt that since this Heaven Stage Island's teleportation array could send all these people over, then it should be able to send them over. Of course, he couldn't let some of them die, right? Then, these people might have been teleported over, but they might have been teleported to other similar places. This reminded Lin E of the trial of Heavenly Elixir Sect. Everyone was teleported to the Five Evil Savage Land, and the environment here was a bit like the Five Evil Savage Land. Although there was no Five Evil Chi here, this was a kind of intuition. Limitless Fist Master, what do you think? Dongfang Badeo couldn't help but ask. This Limitless Fist Master was the great elder of the Holy Fist Palace. Because of Li Siba, the Holy Fist Palace did not oppose Lin before, but it could not be said that their relationship was very good. I can't see it for the time being. The Limitless Fist Master shook his head. But since the Heavenly Stage Island is so powerful, I don't think it will harm us. I don't think it will harm us. Let's just wait. Look at young hero Lin. He isn't anxious at all. Humph, we are all on the island, and everyone is equal. Young hero Lin is just a junior. Dongfang Badeo snorted coldly, because before everyone opened the Heaven Stage Island, they also said at the Heaven Stage meeting that everyone's purpose was to successfully reach the Heaven Stage Island. So in the process of opening the Heaven Stage Island, they could not attack each other. Therefore, Dongfang Badeo now did not take the initiative to provoke Lin Yi, and Lin Yi could not kill him, so he was a little unscrupulous. Of course, this agreement might be invalid after everyone went to the island and formed a gang, but at least it was still valid now. Everyone stayed on this high platform for more than half an hour, and they were inevitably a little strange and anxious. What was this idea? Would the Heaven Stage Island be a high platform, and then everyone would die alone on it? There was not even a woman here, and they could not reproduce. Homosexuality could not be passed on to the next generation. Is there anyone? Damn it! Kong Mingming finally waited impatiently and shouted loudly. His voice echoed in the sky, but no one answered him. Boss Lin E, it can't be the predecessor of the Heaven Stage Island to test us, right? Zhong Pingliang had the memory of the Mad Dragon Patriarch in his mind, so he still knew about the customs of these ancient people. He thought about it and asked, Test? I can't rule out this possibility. Linny nodded, but at least there should be some hints. Let's wait and see. Zhong Pingliang nodded, then ran to the side and wandered around, presumably looking for any hints on this high platform. However, after about 10 minutes, suddenly there was a long roar in the sky, which made everyone who was a little anxious suddenly serious, and they looked up at the sky. They saw a flying spirit beast in the distant sky. Although this was only a spirit beast, it also made everyone excited, because at least this meant that there were creatures nearby, and it was not a lonely dead island. At this time, when the flying spirit beast flew closer, everyone became even more excited because there was a person sitting on the back of the flying spirit beast. Although the age and gender of the person couldn't be seen clearly, anyone who could appear here must be a peerless expert. Senior, wait a minute, Kong Ming shouted. Among them, he was the one who was most anxious to leave. Here, Dongfang Badeo also shouted. He came here to break through the heavenly Tao, not to waste time on this high platform. However, I didn't need to call. The flying spirit beast itself would fly here. They saw the spirit beast flying lower and lower, and the person on the spirit beast could be seen by everyone. This was a man about 30 years old, but it was said to be 30 years old because of his appearance. His actual age was unknown. After all, the masters here were likely to be masters above the heavenly Tao. The Heaven Stage could already keep their appearance forever, let alone the masters of the heavenly Tao. Chapter 35:51. Who is the old, weak, sick, and disabled? Dongfang Badeo's temper was as overbearing as his name. This man said that he was old, weak, sick, and disabled. Naturally, he was not happy. Those who could successfully land on the Heaven Stage Island were the best in the cultivation world. He was feeling good about himself. When the man said that, his face suddenly became ugly. I used to be the master of the Dongfang family, an ancient family. I was a master of the great perfection of the peak late stage of Heaven Stage. The man's eyes were fierce. He raised his sleeves, and an invisible strength shot out of his hand. Don Fongbadeo was directly knocked to the ground with a puff. He struggled on the ground for a long time before he got up with a red face, but he dared not make trouble again. What kind of master was the person who could teach him a lesson through the air? Looking at the whole cultivation world, it was the unique existence. Even Lin Yi could not. It's really weak. The man snorted, and then said to Lin Yi and others impatiently, I am the welcoming envoy of the North Island of Heaven's Stage. I will take you to the welcoming pavilion of the North Island to report. You newcomers, who will go with me? Ah, Senior, I'll go. Don Fongbadeo completely put away his previous arrogance at this time. He could not see the strength of the man in front of him. Obviously, he was of a higher level than him, and he was to guide them to the welcoming pavilion, so he could not make trouble. Old man, what are you yelling for? You have offended the welcoming envoy. Let me go, Kong Ming Ming said immediately at the moment, because it seemed that only 2 or 3 people could sit on the flying spirit beast. He didn't know if 3 people could sit down, so he must fight for a chance for himself. My spirit beast can only sit 3 people. In that case, you 2 come up first. The man said faintly. We have to go up too. Zhong Pingyang pulled Lin Yi at this time, and then said to Kong Ming Ming and Dong Fongbadeo, Are you going to rob us? Chapter 35:52. It seemed that the young man had expected to receive Lin Yi and Xiao Ran. However, his attitude was not as arrogant as the previous 2. Instead, he looked quite approachable. Okay, thank you, Senior. Xiao Ran glanced at Lin Yi and boarded the flying spirit beast. Lin Yi followed him. The flying spirit beast slowly took off. Xiao Ran could not help but ask, Senior, how should I address you? The freckled man shook his head and said, All right, don't call me Senior. I'm just a bitter guy. Call me Senior Brother Bitter Guy. Huh? Xiao Ran was stunned. He thought the freckled man was approachable, but he did not expect him to be so easygoing. He even gave himself the nickname Senior Brother Bitter Guy. Both of you are rogue cultivators from the secular world, right? Senior Brother Bitter Guy asked. Sort of. How did you know? This surprised Lin. He knew about Xiao Ran's background. It was okay to say that he was a rogue cultivator. After all, the Xiao family was no longer an ancient aristocratic family. There are 6 people who were teleported to the North Island this time. The first person who came to pick them up was from the Soaring Pavilion. Those 2 must be ruthless figures from the big sects, right? Senior Brother Bitter Guy asked with a smile. Yes, Senior Brother Bitter. How did you know? Xiao Ran was also a little surprised. The second person who came to pick them up was from the mysterious pavilion. Those 2 must be cultivators who look very old, right? Senior Brother Bitter Guy continued to guess. That's right. Lin Yi nodded. Senior Brother Bitter, why is that? Senior Brother Ku Bai did not explain further, continuing, I'm the Clear Cloud Pavilion's guide envoy. Our Clear Cloud Pavilion has the lowest status among the 3 pavilions. Every time we choose a disciple, we are always the last to choose a disciple. Most of the disciples who join us are rogue cultivators with humble origins. Senior Brother, do you mean those people from before? Does that count as joining the Soaring Sky Pavilion and the Mysterious Pavilion? Lin, he was a bit surprised. He didn't expect the Heaven Step Island to be like this. There was actually a sect here, and it seemed like there were 3 different factions in this sect. This was a bit of a headache. That's right. The Soaring Sky Pavilion was the most popular pavilion on the North Island of the Heaven Steps. Here were some second-generation cultivators and the outstanding descendants of the island's famous families, even if they came from the secular world. They're also the core disciples of big sections. Senior Marshal Brother Ku Bai said, They're the people on the North Island of Heaven Stage, the ones you can't provoke the most. Next was the Mysterious Pavilion. That mysterious pavilion was filled with old men. Naturally, it couldn't be said that the other pavilions didn't have any old men, but their pavilions had a lot of them. Moreover, they didn't like young people, even those with tender faces who had advanced to the heaven rank early on and retained their youthful appearance, unless they were their own descendants. This group of people took advantage of their seniority. Some of them were the elders of the North Island, although they were not as powerful as the soaring sky pavilion. But he wasn't weak either, and the weakest is our blue cloud pavilion. Well, the grassroots aren't weak either, Lenny said with a bitter smile. There's still a big difference. Senior Marshal Brother Koo shook his head. Our cultivation foundation wasn't as solid as theirs, so when we were both at the peak of the late stage of the heaven stage, there was a gap. There's a difference. Breaking through to the heavenly Tao is equivalent to my current level. We're called foundation establishment experts here, and there's also a difference in strength. Don't look at the name Blue Cloud Pavilion. When it was first named, it meant that those grassroots could rise rapidly here, but Also, don't mention the term Heavenly Tao anymore. Heavenly Tao is a big category. If you tell others that you're a Heavenly Tao expert, then others will think that you're arrogant. Oh, I can't say it. Lin, he was slightly stunned. Didn't the secular world say Heavenly Tao? Could it be that there was a higher level above foundation establishment? As for the matters of the three pavilions, Lin, he didn't care too much about it for the time being. Well, the so-called Heavenly Tao is a general term for an ethereal level. Senior Marshal Brother Koo was not stingy with his words and said everything he knew. Before, we cultivators were divided into internal and external paths. Chi refinement and body refinement were all to improve the strength of the body, while Heavenly Tao is a pursuit that goes against the heavens. You can also understand it as cultivation. Before cultivation, now cultivation. In the secular world, before Heavenly Tao, your strength was equivalent to the Chi refinement stage among cultivators. After stepping into Heavenly Tao, you're at the foundation establishment stage, and only then can you be considered to have truly touched the path of cultivation. You're Heavenly Tao, but you're not the strongest. Lin, he didn't expect that there seemed to be many levels above Heavenly Tao. Of course, I'm only at the early phase of foundation establishment. Above me, there's still the peak of the early phase, the middle phase. Senior Marshal Brother Koo explained. Hearing this, Lin Yi's complacent mood dropped to the bottom. When he was in the secular world, he used the omnipotent arts with the art of dragon mastery and the art of dragon mastery, stealing the heavens, and successfully broke through to Heavenly Tao. It was a brand new level of strength, and Lin thought that he had reached the final stop of a cultivator. As long as he went to Sky Class Island and found the Pill St. Jean Liju, he could find a way to wake Xiaoka and Armadillo, and then he could go back. What he didn't expect was that Xiaoka still hadn't woken up, and 7 more inheritors were unconscious. The pressure on Lin Yi's body was like a mountain. But that was okay. He could just ask Zhang Liju. What he didn't expect was that his strength was the weakest. It seemed a little different from what Lin Yi had thought when he first came here, looking for Zhang Liju in a high-profile manner. Very well, but it looks like our Clear Cloud Pavilion is the most harmonious pavilion. Senior Brother Koo is so amiable, and those 2 envoys who tried to approach earlier are so arrogant. Xiao Ran nodded his head and said he didn't think that joining Blue Cloud Pavilion was inappropriate. He was a low-profile person, and after coming here, naturally, he had to be more low-profile. He didn't have anyone to rely on, and his strength wasn't that good either, so he had to be careful. Harmonious? Senior Marshal Brother Koo laughed weirdly. I won't say much. You'll know when you see it. Isn't it? Lin Yi paused. He thought that this Blue Cloud Pavilion was made up of grassroots, and that it should be a harmonious pavilion. I'm harmonious, but that doesn't mean others are. I was sent here because of Senior Marshal Brother Koo. I'm someone who gets bullied, and that's my personality. Senior Marshal Brother Koo shook his head. Isn't this welcoming good? Those 2 from before, weren't they really strong? Xiao Ran didn't understand. Chapter 35:53. But this was the North Island, and he was from a middle island, so Lin Yi didn't have to worry about him looking for trouble for now. This confirmed Lin Yi's suspicions. This island was divided into many areas, and the other participants had probably gone to other islands. Previously, they were here to pick the best ones, and I'm here to pick the rest. Regardless of who's left, I'm going to pick them up. If the eldest senior brother in charge finds out that I'm here to pick you two loose cultivators, I'm going to be scolded again. This is a thankless job. Who would want to do it? The bitter Shi Xiang shook his head. That's all he could do to bully me. If he has the guts, he should go fight with Chong Tian and Xuanji pavilions. So we're the weakest here. Lin, he was a little speechless. Senior brother Ku, we're okay, right? We're not that weak. Man, there's no need for that. I get it, but I'm used to being scolded. It's fine. The bitter Shi Xiang shook his head. But Lin could tell that this bitter Shi Xiang was a good person, answering all his questions. At this point, Xiao Chun already knew that the heaven-ranked North Island was only a part of the heaven-ranked island. There were other teleportation platforms on the heaven-ranked island, and there were also other people in charge of receiving them. As for where they were sent to, that bitter senior brother did not know. With his ability, he really did not know that much. Ku Shi Xiao, have you heard of this Zhang Liju? Lin, he finally asked the question he wanted to ask the most. Since he knew that Tian Chan and the others went to other places, Lin, he was relieved. Since they were all on Sky Class Island, he'd see them sooner or later. Zhang Liju, Elixir God Zhang Liju? Senior brother Ku blanked for a second before replying. I know, he's a famous person from our heaven-ranked North Island. As for where he is now, I'm not sure. I'm just a grassroots disciple selected from a nearby village, and it hasn't been long since I joined the Clear Cloud Pavilion. I don't know. To put it bluntly, we're all newbies, but I'm a bit luckier, and I've already broken through to Sky Dao, and I'm a foundation-building practitioner now. Thank you, Senior Brother Ku. Linny nodded. He didn't have a definite answer, but Linny knew that Zhang Liju should be here. Back in the tomb, Lin, he already suspected that Zhang Liju wasn't dead, and that something was missing from the tomb. Lin, he was even more certain that Zhang Liju had gone back to get his stuff. Since Zhang Liju had broken through Sky's Dao, he should be on Sky Class Island. While Lin Yi and Zhong Pingliang were inquiring about the situation with his bitter senior brother, Kong Ming and Zhong Pingliang, who had set off earlier, were already having a good time with their guide. Unlike the bitter senior brother, their guide had a powerful background. His name was Su Lingxiong. He was the grandson of the third elder of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, the second generation of cultivation. In every pavilion, the person with the most authority was the pavilion master. It was the few elders. However, the pavilion master rarely asked about such small matters. It was already good enough for an elder to show up for the welcoming ceremony. Damn, 30 years old, and he's already a foundation builder. Those so-called cultivation geniuses are just a pile of shit compared to senior brother Su. Kong Ming said flatteringly after finding out about the background of the guy. He knew very well that if he wanted to establish himself on Sky Class Island, relying on his own strength was definitely not enough. The most important thing was to get on someone's good side, and this Su Lingxiong in front of him was obviously a very thick thigh. As long as he could get on his good side, not only would he be able to establish himself on Sky Class Island, he would even be able to find Lin Yi for revenge in the future. Back then, he relied on kissing little peaches asked to get in touch with the Shinshin Elder. If he were to get in touch with the Pavilion Master, this Su Lingxiong would also become Kong Ming's stepping stone. In Kong Ming's eyes, he would become a pile of shit just like Little Peach. Su Lingxiong was overjoyed, thinking that this kid was not bad. However, on the surface, he still pretended to smile indifferently. Kong Ming's flattery had hit the bottom of his heart. Looking at the whole Sky Class North Island, there were not many who could set foot in the Heavenly Law Foundation establishment before the age of 30. There were only a few in each batch of disciples. Although Su Lingxiong's strength was largely built up by all kinds of precious resources, the strength of the early stage of foundation establishment was enough to crush many geniuses of the same generation. Kong Ming's ability to read people's expressions was very strong. Looking at Su Lingxiong's expression, he knew that his flattery was right this time. He immediately struck while the iron was hot and said, "Before coming to Heaven Class Island, I thought that a guy like Lin E, who reached the peak of the late stage of heaven class at the age of 19, was already a super genius that could not be found in 10,000 years. But now that I see Senior Brother Su, I know that this idea is too ridiculous. Looking at cultivation from the perspective of the secular world is simply looking at the sky from the bottom of a well. If one wanted to please someone, not only must he know how to flatter, but he must also set up a common enemy for each other. Only in this way could he close the relationship as soon as possible. This was the experience that Kong Ming Ming had concluded. Just like him and the Xianqian elder, it was like this. From the performance of this Senior Brother Su, just now, he should look down on those so-called cultivation geniuses. As long as they were geniuses, they were usually arrogant and had a sense of superiority. This kind of person could not tolerate experts of the same kind. Sure enough, Su Lingqiong quickly took the bait. A 19-year-old at the peak of heaven class? Could that Lin E be a core disciple of some big sect in the secular world? No, he's just an ordinary grassroots loose cultivator, but he's so awesome that he's unparalleled in the world. He's super good at acting cool. Kong Ming Ming quickly said, grassroots loose cultivator? Acting cool? Su Lingqiong showed disdain and said, then maybe he picked up some unorthodox cultivation method. Although his level increased very quickly, his foundation is not stable, and his strength is definitely not much. Even if this kind of person is at the peak of the late stage of heaven class, to succeed in building his foundation, it's as difficult as ascending to heaven. That's normal. You know the frog at the bottom of the well, right? There's no one around him to compare with if Senior Brother Su's eyes are really sharp. If he knew about Senior Brother Su, he would have long been shocked to the point of schizophrenia. However, that Lenny relied on some small tricks to run amok in the secular world. Everyone dared to be angry, but did not dare to say anything. Senior Brother Su, you have to uphold justice for us. Kong Ming Ming pretended to be pitiful. There's such a thing? Isn't he just a grassroots loose cultivator? How dare he bully you? Is the sect behind you weak to this extent? Su Lingqiong frowned. Chapter 35-54. Pinliang, on the other hand, curled his lips. What face? It was obvious that he was afraid of Boss Lin Yi's beating. Kong Ming Ming was really good at making up stories. But he could tell that Kong Ming Ming had already fooled this Su Shixiao. If he spoke up for Lin Yi, he might offend this Su Shixiao. It was best to wait and see what other tricks Kong Ming Ming had up his sleeve. Besides, Lin Yi had sent him here to be a spy. He couldn't act rashly. He just needed to report to Lin Yi in time. So, he pretended to be nonchalant and asked Su Shixiao, if the two of us go with you, will there be no one to care about the others? Not really. According to tradition, after the soaring pavilion selects people, the remaining people will be picked up by the other two pavilions. Su Lingqiong said as he looked at Kong Ming Ming, the mysterious pavilion will only pick some old men. Since that Lin you mentioned is so young, he must have been picked up by the weakest Blue Cloud Pavilion. That's the famous trash shelter. Grassroots solo practitioners didn't have a strong foundation, and since the newcomers were the leftovers from the other two pavilions, Blue Cloud Pavilion's newcomers were the weakest in terms of strength and potential. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that it was a trash shelter. Trash shelter? Doesn't that mean we can bully them in the future? Kong Ming Ming's eyes lit up. You don't have to wait. You can bully those trash later. I want to see how arrogant that Lin Yi can be. Su Lingqiong smiled meaningfully. That's quite arrogant. Kong Ming Ming pretended to be excited. When Su Shixiang came to pick us up, the kid next to brother Zhong Pingliang didn't even spare a glance at Su Shixiang. He didn't even want to come up. Luckily, brother Zhong Pingliang changed his ways. Otherwise, he would have gone to the trash shelter too. Oh, that kid? He doesn't look like much. Those who were powerful were the ones who acted cool. Those without strength are called idiots. In a while, I'll show you what an idiot is. Su Lingqiong nodded faintly and looked at Zhong Pingliang. But how did you change your mind? You used to follow that Lin Yi or something. It's a long story. He stole my woman and my underling. I have nothing left, and one of my kidneys was cut off by him. If I want to survive, I can only pretend to be courteous to him. But it's all good now. I have a big backer like senior brother Sue. I don't need to be afraid. Zhong Pingliang said pitifully. Fuck, why are you so unlucky? Fortunately, you're with me. Otherwise, you'd be bullied to death. Su Lingqiang was a little disdainful of Pingliang, but he was his man now, and the kid had a way with words, so he accepted him. As they spoke, the aerial spirit beast had already landed in an open space. In front of him was a magnificent pavilion. In the middle of the main door were 3 huge golden words on a black background, welcoming new pavilion. At this moment, there were already people waiting in front of the door. As soon as the flying spirit beast landed, a circle of people immediately surrounded them. The person in the lead had white hair and a youthful complexion. He had an imposing appearance, and when he faced others, he always had the demeanor of a master. He only bowed to Su Lingqiang. This is the pavilion master of Welcoming New Pavilion, Hu Yinfeng. Although the 2 of you were chosen by Soaring Pavilion, before you succeed in your foundation building, you still have to stay in Welcoming New Pavilion to train. He will take care of you in the future. Su Lingqiang nodded his head at Hu Yinfeng as he introduced the place to Hu Yinfeng. Master Su, don't worry. As long as I'm here, Welcoming New Pavilion won't lose out to you too. Hu Yinfeng stroked his white beard and guaranteed with a smile. Although Hu Yinfeng was the pavilion master of Welcoming New Pavilion in name, and it sounded very powerful, he was actually just a small team leader in the training camp. He was on a completely different level compared to Soaring Pavilion. Not to mention the pavilion master, even an elder from Soaring Pavilion, was a big figure that he had to try his best to climb up to and look up to. The reason why he was able to sit as the pavilion master of Welcoming New Pavilion was because he had the support of Soaring Pavilion's elder. Naturally, he had to curry favor with Su Lingqiang, the precious grandson of the 3rd elder. The position of the pavilion master of Welcoming New Pavilion still had some benefits, and he was still hoping to continue doing it. Even if he managed to reach the peak of Welcoming New Pavilion in the future, when he was promoted to be a manager of one of the 3 great pavilions, he still needed to have a strong network. Oh, it's the pavilion master. No wonder you have such an elegant demeanor. My name is Kong Mingming. I'm new here, and I hope that the pavilion master will take care of me in the future. Kong Mingming flattered with the spirit of sucking up to everyone. Although he had already established a friendship with Su Lingqiang, the 2nd generation of cultivation, Su Lingqiang was still an inner disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion after all. He would not stay in the Welcoming Pavilion for long. The pavilion master of the Welcoming Pavilion in front of him was a good target for him to take advantage of in the future. Realistically speaking, how he would fare in the Welcome Pavilion from now on would depend entirely on whether the pavilion master would support him or not. If Kong Mingming thought of this, Zhong Pingliang naturally thought of it as well. He didn't dare to be negligent and quickly added, "My name is Zhong Pingliang. I don't dare to say anything else, but I can definitely be an assistant. In the future, if the pavilion master needs anything, just tell me and I'll be there." Of course, of course. Both of you are talented, and you have a big backer like young Master Su. You will definitely have a bright future in the future. Seeing that the 2 of them were so agreeable, Hu Yinfeng was naturally happy to help them. Not only could he please Su Lingqiang, but he could also get 2 more followers. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. One had to know that in this Welcoming New Pavilion, it didn't mean that his words carried weight just because he was the pavilion master. There were still 2 vice pavilion masters behind him, eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey. If he wanted to suppress his opponents and stabilize his position as the pavilion master, one of the keys was to curry favor with a strong backer like the elder of Soaring Pavilion. The other key was how many followers he could get. The more followers he had, the more power he would have. Only then could he truly be the master of the house. Moreover, what made Hu Yinfeng the happiest was that even though he wasn't weak now, his hair was still white before he broke through to Sky Class late phase peak. That was why he had a grandfather face. This was actually quite a shameful thing on Sky Class Island. Even though he looked like a baby, he might even be older than him. He really wasn't that old, but he grew up too quickly. However, Kong Ming Ming said that he had a sage-like demeanor, which made him feel elated all of a sudden. After a while, the other two flying spirit beasts that lagged behind also arrived one after another. Dongfang Badeo's group also had someone go up to greet them, but it was not Hu Yinfeng, the pavilion master, but the vice pavilion master of welcoming new pavilion. Chapter 3555. According to the customs of the mysterious pavilion, Feng Song didn't look young, but he had a dignified air about him. Among the two deputy pavilion masters, Feng Song was the one who posed the greatest threat to Hu Yunfeng's position as pavilion master. Although his background wasn't as strong as Hu Yunfeng's, the newcomers selected by the mysterious pavilion were basically under his banner. In terms of strength and rallying power, he wasn't weak. He was currently Hu Yunfeng's biggest competitor. As for the remaining deputy pavilion master, although his rank was the same as Feng Song's, his position in the welcoming pavilion had been completely marginalized due to the fact that the Blue Cloud Pavilion's backing wasn't impressive and he didn't have any outstanding strength. Let alone competing for the position of pavilion master, it seemed like he might not even be able to keep his position as deputy pavilion master. Even the newcomers of the Blue Cloud Pavilion would at most call him third pavilion master when they met, which showed how awkward his position was. If it weren't for the fact that the three pavilion summit had no choice but to arrange a third pavilion master for the balance of power, the welcoming pavilion would have been Hu Yunfeng and Feng Song's world. Compared to the previous two groups of pavilion masters and deputy pavilion masters who personally came out to welcome them, senior brother Ku Bai and Lin Yi, who arrived last, were completely ignored. Not only did they not see any important figures, but even a random disciple of the welcoming pavilion couldn't be bothered with them. Blue Cloud Pavilion was famous for being a waste shelter. They were destined to have no future in this life. So what was there to greet? But what puzzled Linny the most was that even if the pavilion master didn't come, why didn't anyone else from the Blue Cloud Pavilion come to welcome them? Even if there wasn't a big lineup, shouldn't their own people at least come? This made Lin Yi feel that senior brother Ku Bai's words weren't nonsense. This was the worst pavilion, and they weren't a monolithic block. Lin Yi wasn't the only one who was depressed. Even Xiao Ran, who wanted to keep a low profile, was depressed when he saw this scene. After all, those who could come to this heavenly island were all figures who stood at the peak of the secular world. They were dragons and phoenixes among men, favored by the heavens. When had they ever been given the cold shoulder like this? If everyone received the same treatment, then there would be nothing to feel unbalanced about. The problem was that the other side had important people come out to greet them, but they didn't even have a small fry on their side. The difference was too great. This difference in treatment meant that they had already lost at the starting line from the very beginning. It was easy to imagine how their days in the welcoming pavilion would turn out. Senior brother Ku Bai had already expected this scene. Seeing the uncertain expressions on the two's faces, he could only awkwardly comfort them. Although our Blue Cloud Pavilion can't be compared to the other two pavilions, it's not as good as the other two pavilions. Actually, there's also a deputy pavilion master. He wanted to bring some people to welcome you, but he was called away by the pavilion master to deal with some other matters, so Lin Yi and Xiao Ran looked at each other with a bitter smile. Looking at the grand gestures of the other two pavilions, they knew that the welcoming pavilion still valued the newcomers very much. As for their Blue Cloud Pavilion's deputy pavilion master, he was temporarily assigned to do some chores. He couldn't even come out to greet the newcomers. It could be seen how weak his position was. No wonder even the Clear Cloud Pavilion's internal department wasn't as united as a piece of ironboard. If it was any other newcomer who had been given such a cold shoulder, they would definitely have died. If any newcomer had been given such cold treatment, it would be strange if they still listened to their deputy pavilion master. This was a typical example of a bear in a nest. Let's go. There will be a welcoming ceremony in the main hall later. Apart from a few of you who teleported here from the secular world, there will be a welcoming ceremony. Apart from a few of you who were sent here from the secular world, the newcomers who were selected from the main island are already there. I'll take you there. Senior brother Ku Bai sighed. Lin, Yi, and Xiao Ran nodded. Since things had already come to this point, it was useless to complain in their hearts. After all, they couldn't just switch to Rushing Sky Pavilion or Mysterious Pavilion at the last minute. Not to mention that the two of them weren't that shameless. Even if they did, they wouldn't accept them. Otherwise, they would have been selected long ago. Since they were already here, they could only take things one step at a time. After entering the main entrance of the welcoming pavilion, they passed through a courtyard and arrived at the main hall. Just as senior brother Ku Bai said, there were already a lot of newcomers gathered here. At first glance, there were about 40 to 50 people. They were all selected from the various towns and villages on the island. Every one of them was above the late stage of Heaven Stage. Even those at the peak of the late stage of Heaven Stage could be seen everywhere. The newcomers present had spontaneously divided into 3 small groups. There was a group of about 10 people in the center, each of them dressed in luxurious clothes and had an air of superiority about them. Apart from their own circle, they looked at everyone else with disdain. In the entire main hall, their voices were the loudest, and they had the air of natural superiors. This feeling of déjà vu reminded Lin Yi of the disdainful attitude of the people in the secular world towards the people in the countryside. The two were exactly the same. These newcomers are all chosen by Rushing Sky Pavilion. Each of them has a great background. They are the real second generation of cultivators. You must not provoke these people in the future. You can't afford to. Senior brother Ku Bai whispered to Lin Yi and Xiao Ran. He was afraid that the two of them didn't know the details and accidentally brought disaster to themselves. Lin Yi and Xiao Ran finally understood. No wonder this group of people kept talking about their families' so-and-so elders and so-and-so stewards. They were actually the second generation of cultivators. Although these people might not be very strong, each of them had a deep background. If they really provoked the big shots behind them, it would indeed not be a small problem. At that moment, Su Lingqiang just happened to walk past with Kong Mingming and Zhong Pingliang. Zhong Pingliang winked at Lin Yi, and Lin Yi nodded in understanding. In this kind of situation where the situation was unclear, it was better for Zhong Pingliang to sneak into Rushing Sky Pavilion than to hole up with him in Blue Cloud Pavilion. Apart from other things, he could at least get some useful information that might come in handy in the future. Senior brother Su, look, that guy with that pretentious face is Lin Yi. Kong Xiaoming took the opportunity to whisper into Su Lingqiang's ear. He couldn't wait for Su Lingqiang to deal with Lin Yi right now. He wanted Lin Yi to embarrass himself in front of everyone. Let's see how he'd be able to stay in the welcoming pavilion after that. Unfortunately, Su Lingqiang didn't go along with his wishes. He was the grandson of Rushing Sky Pavilion's 3rd elder. Dealing with a mere newcomer from the secular world in this kind of situation would not only dirty his hands, but he would also be laughed at by the 2nd generation of the same circle. He wouldn't do something that would lower his status. Chapter 35:56. He didn't even bother to look at Lin Yi and walked to the middle. Although the group of 2nd generation cultivators were arrogant, they respectfully called him Master Su when they saw him. After all, Su Lingqiang was not only stronger than them, but also had a stronger background. If they offended him, not only would they be in trouble, but also their family's background would be implicated. They wouldn't do such a stupid thing. These two are from Soaring Pavilion, so they'll be my people in the future. You guys take care of them. Su Lingqiang pointed at Kong Xiaoming and Kong Xiaoming as he greeted the group of 2nd generation cultivators. Originally, the 2nd generation cultivators looked down on Kong Mingming and Zhong Pingliang from the secular world from the bottom of their hearts. But for the sake of Su Lingqiang and the fact that these two people were good at talking, they reluctantly accepted them. Since the two of them had latched onto young Master Su's thighs, they could be considered as people with some background. At the same time that Kong Mingming and Zhong Pingliang joined the 2nd generation cultivators party, also known as Soaring Pavilion. On the other side, Dongfang Badeo and Lawless Fist also mixed into the small circle on the left of the 2nd generation cultivators as they wished. Unlike the arrogant 2nd generation cultivators, most of the people in this circle were not young. The youngest was a middle-aged man in his 40s or 50s, and their average strength was higher than that of the others present. At least they were masters who had just stepped into the peak of the late stage of Heaven's stage. Although they didn't talk to each other, they all looked scheming, strong, and overbearing, and not easy to mess with. These people are all from Mysterious Pavilion, although they don't have a deep background like the second-generation cultivators. After all, they are older, and their strength is generally much stronger than the masters of the same level. It's better to avoid them in the future. The bitter senior brother continued to advise Lin Yi and Zhong Pingliang, and these guys are the most difficult to deal with, and they often take advantage of their seniority. Although some people are older than them, they broke through Heaven stage earlier, so they look young. The advantage of these people is that behind them is the Master of Mysterious Pavilion. It is said that the Master of Mysterious Pavilion is one of the most powerful people in the North Island of Heaven stage. He is very difficult to get along with, and he is very protective. Even the Soaring Sky Pavilion's Pavilion Master was his junior. Therefore, it's best if we don't get involved with these people. You also know that in the secular world, there's such a saying as punxi. We also have it here. If these old things don't do well, they'll blame you. When the time comes, if the Pavilion Master is still willing to stand up for such a small matter, we'll be the ones to suffer. Lin Yi and the other two could only look at each other speechlessly. The second generation of cultivators couldn't afford to offend them, and neither could the old man. No matter who they met, they had to tuck their tails between their legs and behave. Of the three pavilions, Blue Cloud Pavilion was the weakest. The most depressing thing was that these old fellows actually knew how to blackmail. Is this the cultivation world? Come on, let me introduce you to our Blue Cloud Pavilion's own newcomers. Just like you, they're all grassroots rogue cultivators. However, they're selected from all over the island. The bitter senior apprentice brother led Lin Yi and the other two to the last remaining small circle. If the first impression that the second generation of cultivators from Soaring Pavilion gave people was that they were ostentatious, and the first impression that the old men from Mysterious Pavilion gave people was that they were powerful, then the first impression that the grassroots rogue cultivators from Blue Cloud Pavilion gave people was that they were a bunch of loose sand. Their average strength was the weakest of the three circles. Generally, they were only at the late stage of Heaven stage. There weren't many peak late stage Heaven stage, and those who had reached the Great Perfection stage were even rarer. They had neither strength nor background. More than a dozen of them just stood there loosely, occasionally conversing with each other in a low voice. They didn't even have the confidence to speak a little louder. It could be seen how weak they were. However, this small circle was divided into several groups. Each of them did their own things. The bitter senior apprentice brother led Lin Yi and the other two in front of everyone and introduced them. Fellow junior apprentice brothers, these two beside me are newcomers from the secular world, Lin Yi and Xiao Ran. In the future, they will also be our Blue Cloud Pavilion's preparatory disciples. You can all get to know each other. It was Lin Yi's first time here, and while he was stronger than everyone here, he didn't want to show off. The main reason he came here was to meet the pill god and medicine Saint Zhang Liju, not to fight with these people. Therefore, he and Xiao Ran cooperatively greeted the crowd. However, the crowd only glanced at the two of them coldly. They were not even willing to greet them, let alone communicate with them. We're all new here, and we're not familiar with each other yet. We'll get to know each other slowly. The bitter senior apprentice brother's face turned red as he tried to save himself. Even the bitter senior apprentice brother didn't expect these people to be so cold, and the most embarrassing thing was that Lin Yi and Lin Yi had to laugh at him so quickly. No matter what, he was still an outstanding disciple of the previous generation of the Welcome Pavilion, and he was appointed by Blue Cloud Pavilion to be the manager of the Welcome Pavilion. He was one of the two manager brothers of the Blue Cloud Pavilion here. In the future, he would be in charge of their daily training, missions, and resource allocation. These people really didn't give him any face at all. It's fine. We'll get to know each other in the future. Lin Yi patted the bitter senior apprentice brother in understanding. He could already tell that this bitter senior apprentice brother was a good person, but he didn't have much prestige, and his personality wasn't strong enough either. Even these newcomers didn't respect him, and it was purely because they saw him as a nice guy that was easy to bully. But what made Lin Yi confused was that he, Xiao Ran, and the others were all Sky-class late-phase peak, and that was why they were able to come here. Why were these people in front of them only at Sky-class late phase, and yet they were able to come here? But this wasn't a good question to ask under the current circumstances, and Lin Yi didn't ask. He planned to ask when there was no one else around. But at this time, a person walked out from the crowd of Blue Cloud Pavilion. It was the only Sky-class late-phase peak expert in this group. His specific age was unknown, but from his appearance, he didn't seem to be more than 30 years old. He walked in front of Lin Yi, looked up and down at Lin Yi, and said with disdain, "Came up from the secular world? To think that in the secular world, that country bumpkin place, there are actually people who know how to cultivate. It's really an eye-opener for me. To be able to come to our heaven-class island is already the blessing of 8 generations of ancestors, right?" The moment he said that, the other rookies standing by the side roared with laughter. Originally, they were the lowest of the lowest in this place as grassroots itinerant cultivators. They could only be submissive, not daring to speak, but after hearing those words, they immediately realized that they were not the worst. There were people even lower than them. Chapter 3557. For a moment, this group of people actually found a sense of superiority in Lin Yi and Xiao Ran. Their indifferent expressions just now were replaced by laughter. Lin Yi was fine. He had long developed the habit of not showing his emotions on his face along the way in the secular world. However, Xiao Ran's expression suddenly changed. This group of people behaved like quails in front of others, not even daring to speak a little louder. Only in front of us, they pretend to be big wolves. Not only are they grassroots loose cultivators, but they also call us country bumpkins. Compared to those arrogant and despotic second-generation cultivators, this group of people who only know how to bully their own people are even more hateful. However, Xiao Ran also knew that he could only think about it in his heart. Back then, wasn't his family also ostracized by those ancient sects? This kind of phenomenon happened everywhere, so there was nothing wrong with it. Junior brothers, calm down, calm down. Take a step back, and everything will be fine. Fighting in this welcome pavilion will be severely punished. Senior brother Ku hurriedly tried to persuade them. He was afraid that Lin Yi and Xiao Ran would fight out of anger. If that happened, not only would they be severely punished, but even he, the steward senior brother, would also be implicated. Of course, there was one kind of competition that was allowed, and that was a challenge. However, he was also afraid that Lin Yi and Xiao Ran would be at a disadvantage, so he couldn't tell them about the challenge. After all, from senior brother Ku's point of view, those from the secular world certainly didn't have a solid foundation in cultivation compared to those from the Heaven Realm North Island. After all, the thinness of the heaven and earth spiritual chi couldn't be compared to mental cultivation methods. Over the years, there were some experts from the secular world who successfully reached the top and entered the upper echelons of the various sects on Middle Island, but they were in the minority. Lin Yi nodded lightly. He had seen too many of these people and was already numb to it. Moreover, with his strength, he could even kill these people in seconds. Even if he faced senior brother Ku, he wouldn't be weak. However, Lin Yi came here for a different purpose, so he didn't need to lower himself to their level. However, one thing could be seen from the behavior of these people. The reason why Blue Cloud Pavilion was the weakest of the 3 pavilions was not because they were grassroots loose cultivators. A pitiful person would definitely have a hateful side to them. Regardless of whether it was strength or background, these people's starting point was already lower than the people from the Soaring Sky Pavilion and Profound Pavilion. Yet, they only knew how to bully their own people. It would be a miracle if they could still make Blue Cloud Pavilion stronger. Chapter 3558. Moreover, The two of them came from the same village. Needless to say, their relationship was much closer than everyone else's. How was this a warning to Meng Tong? He was clearly announcing that Meng Tong was on his side. He was supporting Meng Tong. I know. Don't worry, ninth cousin, I definitely won't embarrass you. Meng Tong chuckled, a proud expression overflowing from his face. As for the way he addressed Meng Jiawang, he also used the way they addressed their relatives in the village. He was also showing off to everyone. He was originally a rare heaven stage great perfection expert in this group. Now that he had a backer like Meng Jiawang, needless to say, he would become the big brother of the newcomers in the future. The situation was stronger than the person. Originally, the Clear Cloud Pavilion's new disciples were all acting on their own, but after Meng Jiawang's words, the two small groups that had separated earlier, although not all of them could be said to have formed, most of the new disciples immediately gathered around Meng Tong's side. In order to live a more comfortable life in the future, they naturally had to choose a side at this time. Otherwise, if someone were to make things difficult for them, their days would be miserable. Of course, in this kind of situation, the relationship established was not reliable at all. These people were all fence-sitters, going to Meng Tong's side just to get some benefits. No wonder this Clear Cloud Pavilion was in such a mess, and the atmosphere was so bad. In this way, Lin, Yi, and Meng Tong were completely excluded from the newcomer group. Standing together with senior brother Bitter, they became completely isolated. Brother Lin, it seems that our situation isn't very good. Xiao Ran smiled bitterly. Humans were social creatures. No matter where they were, being excluded from the group usually wouldn't end well, especially now that they had just arrived and their strength wasn't very outstanding. Lin, he shook his head indifferently. Don't worry. Don't we still have senior brother Bitter? We won't suffer too much. In the secular world, Lin, he had always been a rogue cultivator. Even if he eventually stood at the peak of the cultivation world, he still relied on strength, not a backer. Otherwise, if Lin he knew his own background earlier, he could just say, Lin Dongfang is my grandfather and Yang Ming is my master. Wouldn't I be invincible? Comparing backing was a sign of weakening one's own strength. Hey, junior brother Lin Yi, don't expect too much from me. Although I'm one of the two managers, the power lies with senior brother Meng. Our Blue Cloud Pavilion trusts him more, so there are many things that I can't say much about. Senior brother Wu shook his head with a bitter smile. He actually had a backer. He was an elder of Blue Cloud Pavilion. However, his backer went to East Island to complete a task, and there was no news of him after that. So, he was in trouble. However, in order to not let Lin, Yi, and Xiao Ran worry too much, he still comforted them. But don't worry, junior brothers, it's within my authority. If it's within my power, I'll definitely help. Xiao Ran smiled sheepishly. Even senior brother Wu didn't have much confidence in himself. It seemed like the days ahead were going to be tough. On the other hand, Lin, he didn't mind it too much. He had the Jade Space as a trump card, so he didn't have to worry about training. His next task was to familiarize himself with the environment and find out more about Elixir God Zhang Liju. After that, he could plan his next step. As they were talking, they saw the head of the Welcoming Pavilion, Hu Yunfeng, and the vice head of the Welcoming Pavilion, Feng Song. They walked up to the stage in the middle of the hall, instantly attracting the attention of all the newcomers. This was obviously the welcoming ceremony that senior brother Wu Qiu had mentioned. Logically speaking, this was the perfect opportunity to establish their prestige in front of all the newcomers, and the head of the Welcoming Pavilion and the vice head of the Welcoming Pavilion should show up together. But this third head of the Blue Cloud Pavilion was still busy with his so-called chores, and he didn't even have the chance to show his face. It was quite pitiful. Hu Yinfeng looked around. Wherever her gaze landed, the hubbub immediately quieted down. Even the group of second-generation cultivators in the middle was no exception. This wasn't because they wanted to give him face, but because they were completely subdued by Hu Yunfeng's aura. When one's strength reached a high enough level, one's actions would be able to subdue people, and this Hu Yunfeng was the head of the Welcoming Pavilion. Evidently, his reputation wasn't just for show. Newcomers, no matter where you come from, No matter what your background is, since you've come to our welcoming pavilion from today onwards, you are all outer sect preparatory disciples. Everyone will be treated the same. For the next year, the welcoming pavilion will provide you with training resources that you couldn't even imagine in the past. There is only one rule for the distribution of these resources, and that is that only the strong will get it. A ranking competition will be held regularly, and the higher your ranking, the more training resources you will receive, and the lower your ranking will be. Everything will be fought for with your own strength. Blaming others is the behavior of the weak. Within a year, if you can successfully build your foundation, then congratulations, you will be able to enter the 3 great pavilions that everyone dreams of. You will receive better training resources, and your strength and cultivation will improve. However, if you still haven't built your foundation in a year, then I'm sorry, but the welcoming pavilion doesn't raise idlers, and it definitely won't raise trash. You will be sent to the toughest place on the island to do hard labor, and you will no longer be given any training resources. If you can't break through, you can only spend the rest of your life in poverty, and don't even think about taking another step forward. The above is the most important rule of the welcoming pavilion. Does anyone have any questions? Hu Yinfeng looked at the crowd below the stage and asked in a clear voice, "May I ask, head of the pavilion, when will the first ranking competition be held?" "Today?" someone below the stage asked. Hu Yinfeng stroked his white beard and smiled. "Of course not. The first ranking competition will be held next month today." "If that's the case, then how will this month's training resources be distributed? Will everyone be treated equally? I'm afraid it will be very difficult to make it truly fair." The person continued to ask. Everyone immediately pricked up their ears. This question was very reasonable. After all, not all resources could be taken out and distributed equally like pills. Many natural resources like cultivation caves could not be distributed fairly, and they couldn't let everyone exchange cultivation caves every day. Not to mention cultivation, it would be very tiring. Chapter 35:59. As soon as he said that, the entire place was in an uproar. The group of second-generation cultivators from Soaring Pavilion was naturally proud of themselves. As for the newcomers from the other 2 pavilions, they did not look so good, especially those from Blue Cloud Pavilion. Every one of them had a bitter look on their faces. He's already showing favoritism to the second-generation cultivators from the very beginning. How can he say that he treats everyone equally? The grassroots rogue cultivators below the stage immediately became agitated. If the rules of welcoming pavilion had always been to show favoritism to the second-generation cultivators, it would have been fine. Although everyone was dissatisfied, they could only accept it. However, Hu Yinfeng had put on a fair and just attitude. He had clearly given these grassroots rogue cultivators hope, but the reality was so cruel. No wonder they were so agitated. Hu Yunfeng's expression changed slightly when he heard the voice, but he quickly regained his composure. He looked at the crowd and said indifferently, "All of you came from the secular cultivation world or the cultivation tribes on the island. What do you think is fair in the cultivation world? Soaring Pavilion and Mysterious Pavilion are stronger than Blue Cloud Pavilion. This arrangement is based on overall strength. If you think you are capable, enter Blue Cloud Pavilion in the future and turn Blue Cloud Pavilion into the #1 pavilion on the northern island. I'm afraid the best cave abode will be Blue Cloud Pavilion, right? So what is favoritism? I'm doing this for the sake of fairness and justice. I have no selfish motives. Even if I arrange the best cave abode for you, I won't gain anything from it, right?" Although his words were dignified, they were telling everyone the truth. People were stronger than people. However, although the people from Blue Cloud Pavilion felt uncomfortable when they heard that, there was nothing they could do. With just a few words, Hu Yinfeng had already put the cruelty of cultivation in front of everyone, especially for the weak grassroots rogue cultivators from Blue Cloud Pavilion. To sum it up, it could be summed up in 8 words. If there is a way, you want to go, but if there is no way, you will die. Fairness? When had there ever been true fairness in the world? The strong were respected. This was the most essential truth of the world. It was the same everywhere. After Hu Yunfeng's speech, the welcoming ceremony was considered to have ended hastily. For all the newcomers, what happened next was what they were most concerned about. A cave dwelling. According to Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng, the best cultivation abodes were reserved for the second-generation cultivators of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, the slightly inferior ones for the old men of the Mysterious Pavilion, and the worst ones for the new grassroots cultivators of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. The general trend was already like this. It was impossible to change it by relying on the strength of the newcomers. For the grassroots rookies of Blue Cloud Pavilion, the most realistic thing right now was how to choose the better cave abodes among the worst. After all, there is still a need to pick the tallest among the dwarves. Even in the worst batch of cultivation caves, there were still good and bad ones among them. He couldn't afford to offend the second-generation cultivator of Soaring Sky Pavilion, nor could he afford to offend the old man of Mysterious Pavilion. As for the rest of the people from Blue Cloud Pavilion, they were all grassroots rogue cultivators with no foundation, so they could at least compete with each other. Under the lead of Meng Jueguang and senior brother Ku Bai, everyone walked toward the cultivation abodes of Blue Cloud Pavilion. It was not too far from the welcoming pavilion, just in the mountains behind it. Brother Lin, the spiritual energy on this mountain is very rich. In comparison, the spiritual energy in the secular world is so thin that it can be ignored. The difference is more than 100 times. No wonder everyone dreams of coming to this heavenly island, Xiao Ran said to Lin Yi with emotion. Lin Yi could not help but nod. The two of them came from the secular world, so they felt this especially deeply. They did not feel it when they were in the welcoming pavilion, but now that they stepped into the mountain, they immediately felt the spiritual energy in the air. This was simply unimaginable in the secular world. However, Lin Yi had the space in the jade pendant, so his requirement for the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was not particularly high. At this time, he pretended to be surprised. "Hey, you really are a country bumpkin who has never seen the world, making a fuss about such a little spiritual energy. You are really a disgrace to our Blue Cloud Pavilion." Meng Tong, who was walking in front, turned his head and ridiculed. The others on the side also echoed and laughed. They were originally thinking about the matter of the cave residences. They were still quite nervous, but when they looked at Lin Yi and Xiao Ran, the two country bumpkins from the secular world, they immediately found their confidence. Needless to say, the two worst cultivation abodes belonged to these two. Being ridiculed and ridiculed so unscrupulously, Xiao Ran's face suddenly turned red. However, Lin Yi did not react to this and only faintly smiled. This group of people were nothing more than clowns with a twisted mentality. They were suppressed by the Soaring Sky Pavilion and the Mysterious Pavilion, so they ran in front of him to find a sense of existence. There was no need to take it to heart. Seeing this, the bitter senior apprentice brother could only smile bitterly and help the two out. "Junior apprentice brothers, you may not know this, but the mountain we are standing on is not an ordinary mountain. It is a spiritual mountain. There is a huge spiritual jade mine buried under it, so spiritual energy will come out from the ground and dissipate into the air. It is much richer than other places on the island." Spiritual jade mine? Could it be that this spiritual jade mine contains spiritual energy of heaven and earth? Lin Yi could not help but be moved. This reminded him of the Zhenqi energy stone in the secular world. That's right. You can mine spiritual jades from the spiritual jade mine, and the spiritual jades contain very rich spiritual energy. It's an excellent item to assist in cultivation. According to the rules, the Welcome Pavilion will give you a piece of spiritual jade every month. You'll know when you use it, explained the bitter senior brother. A piece of spiritual jade will be given every month? This treatment sounded good, but he did not know the specific effect. Compared to his own space in the jade pendant, he did not know which was better. However, from what Lin Yi felt, even if this spiritual jade was stronger than the energy stones, it was not as rich as the space in the jade pendant. However, Lin Yi was more eager to know at the moment. Although spiritual jades sounded higher than the energy stones in the secular world, they also contained spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Since a space in the jade pendant could recharge the energy stones in the secular world, then did it also have the same effect on spiritual jades? For example, if other people use spiritual jades, could he also use them to recharge? If spiritual jades were really better than the space in the jade pendant, and he could recharge them, then it would be a great tool for cultivation. This question was related to his future cultivation plan. When the spiritual jades were in his hands, he had to test it as soon as possible. Senior Brother Ku, are these cultivation caves also related to the spirit jade mine? Xiao Ran, who was at the side, suddenly asked. That's right. The cultivation cave abode is located on top of this spirit jade mine. Although the density of the spiritual energy varies greatly depending on the location, even the worst one is at least 10 times denser than the one outside. As for the better ones, the density is 100 or even 1,000 times denser. Chapter 3560. Lin Yi and Xiao Ran came to a sudden realization. The worst was only 10 times, while the better ones were 100 or 1,000 times. It was not an exaggeration to describe the disparity between the heaven and earth. It was no wonder these people reacted so fiercely to the cave dwelling allocation. The bitter senior martial brother sighed and continued. For newcomers like you, spiritual jades are very difficult to obtain, except for the one that is distributed every month. Therefore, the most crucial thing that will affect your cultivation progress is the cave abode. With a good cave dwelling, your cultivation will naturally progress by leaps and bounds. With a bad cave dwelling, although it is slightly better than outside, that is all. Although the bitter senior brother's words were directed at Lin, Yi, and Xiao Ran, the others beside them could also hear it. For a moment, everyone unconsciously fell silent. Although the ranking tournament would be held in a month's time, this was the first month starting line, and there was already a huge gap between them. On top of that, these grassroots rogue cultivators from the Clear Cloud Pavilion were much weaker than those from the Soaring Sky Pavilion and Profound Secrets Pavilion. Although it seemed like they still had a chance to make a comeback through the monthly ranking tournament, the difficulty of doing so was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. They were originally weak, and now they were allocated the worst cultivation resources. If they could not obtain a better result in the ranking competition, they could only continue to be ranked last and continue to enjoy the worst cultivation resources. In this vicious cycle, the gap between them would only grow larger and larger. It was likely that they would not be able to make a comeback in this lifetime. It could be seen that the weakness of Blue Cloud Pavilion was already faded from the beginning. At this time, Meng Tong suddenly sneered and said, Heh, even if I can't compare to the people of Soaring Sky Pavilion and Mysterious Pavilion, as long as I can become the strongest in Blue Cloud Pavilion, I will still be able to ascend to Blue Cloud Pavilion in the future. However, as for the country bumpkins of the secular world, I advise you not to hold such unrealistic hopes. Just prepare to do hard labor in a year's time. Ha. That's right, Blue Cloud Pavilion was originally inferior to Soaring Sky Pavilion and Mysterious Pavilion. But as long as they could step on their own people, they would still be able to soar in the future. After hearing Meng Tong's words, the eyes of the rookies in Blue Cloud Pavilion lit up. They stared at Lin, Yi, and Xiao Ran as though they were prey. Persimmons had to be pinched first. Needless to say, these two country bumpkins from the secular world were the weakest persimmons. Lin, Yi, and Xiao Ran looked at each other helplessly. They hadn't even done anything. It was only today that it was reopened. However, as for the density of spiritual chi inside, it's hard to say. If you're lucky, it might be a little higher than the outside. If you're unlucky, I suggest that unlucky junior brother move out to cultivate in the open. Ha. Hearing up to here, everyone's expression suddenly changed. They were all on tenterhooks, afraid that they would become that unlucky guy. If they were assigned to cave number 15, they would really not be able to find a grave, even if they cried. Okay, now we'll start assigning the caves. Those whose names are called, stand up. As Meng Jiuguang spoke, he took out the register and began to assign the caves. He didn't have the slightest intention to discuss with Senior Brother Bitter. One had to know that Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng had said very clearly that the matter of the cave assignment was decided by the two senior brothers in charge of each pavilion. In other words, Senior Brother Bitter also had the right to speak on this matter. Seeing the group of newcomers' playful gazes fall on him, Senior Brother Bitter's face couldn't help but turn pale. If he continued to silently endure in such a critical situation, then in the future, he would never have the slightest bit of prestige in front of these newcomers. Senior Brother Meng, can I also take a look at the matter of the cave assignment? Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Senior Brother Bitter summoned up his courage and said, "What's there to look at? These caves are not assigned to you." Meng Jiuguang glanced at him snappily. What Meng Jiuguang said was right. The 3 pavilion masters and 6 stewards of the Welcome Pavilion had their own caves set up on a separate mountain. However, Senior Brother Bitter didn't ask about this matter at all. He could only murmur awkwardly, but without waiting for Senior Brother Bitter to finish speaking, Meng Jiuguang had already waved his hand and began to assign the caves. Xiao Honkai. Chapter 35-61. His own strength was not as good as others, and his only backer in the Blue Cloud Pavilion was now missing. He could not compare with others in all aspects. What else could he do but continue to be a coward and endure? Behind him, Lin Yi patted him on the shoulder to comfort him. Senior Brother Xiao Honkai was a good person, but unfortunately, no matter where he was, honest people were always the target of bullying. Turning his head to look at the newcomer who stood out, Lin, he had a slight impression of him. Among the people who questioned Hu Yunfeng's unfairness at the welcoming ceremony, this Xiao Honkai was the one who shouted the loudest. "Cousin Jiao, don't forget me." In the crowd, Meng Tong suddenly became anxious. With a backer like Meng Jiuguang here, he thought that cave residence number 1 was already in his pocket. He did not expect that the first person Meng Jiuguang called out was not him, but Xiao Honkai, who he had never met before. "What's the hurry?" Meng Jiuguang glanced at him discontentedly, and then looked at Xiao Honkai, who stood out with a sneer on his face. Just before leaving the welcoming pavilion, he was specially called over by Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng, and it was aimed at this Xiao Honkai. "Who asked this idiot to shout the loudest just now? You're just a grassroots rogue cultivator, yet you dare to talk about some bullshit fairness. Didn't anyone teach you before that in this cultivation world, fists are the fairest thing?" Being stared at by Meng Jiuguang, Xiao Honkai suddenly felt that something was wrong. At first, he thought that he had left a deep impression on this senior brother steward, so he was the first to take care of him. Now that he thought about it, the impression was indeed deep, but this might not be a good thing. As the saying goes, the bird that sticks out gets shot. Sure enough, Meng Jiuguang looked at him and sneered. "Congratulations, Junior Brother Qiao. From now on, the 15th abode at the foot of the mountain is yours." Cave residence number 15 at the foot of the mountain. That was the worst immortal's cave in history that was not much better than an open-air one. Xiao Hongsai's mind could not help but go into a daze. Hearing the surrounding rookies' gloating laughter, she finally snapped out of it. She clenched her fists as veins popped up on her forehead. "Why should I go to the worst cave abode? Senior Brother Meng, I didn't offend you. Wasn't the cave allocated according to one's strength? Since the Soaring Sky Pavilion and the Profound Secrets Pavilion are strong and occupy the best spots, then even though we are the weakest, we can still distribute the spots according to our strength, right? I'm an expert at the peak of the late stage of the Heaven Realm, even if I'm not at the Perfection Realm. Why was he assigned to cave abode number 15? You didn't offend me, but unfortunately, I can't afford to offend the people you offended." Meng Jiuguang smiled coldly. "Why? Is Junior Qiao not satisfied with my arrangements? Then you can sue me, go to the head of the welcoming pavilion, and sue me." This order was obviously hinted by Hu Yunfeng. Therefore, Meng Jiuguang was not afraid of Xiao Hongsai's thorns at all. Xiao Honkai gritted his teeth. Although he was unwilling, he still did not dare to contradict Meng Jueguang in public. Now at least there was a cave abode number 15. Although it was the worst cave abode in history, it was better than nothing. Although he did not know whether Meng Jueguang had something to rely on or was really not afraid of him complaining. At this moment, he could only bear it and said, "I don't dare, but since you want us to break through to the Foundation Establishment realm, then since I've been allocated the worst cave abode, it's good that you don't blame me if we don't succeed." Shout? You said you don't dare, but you actually dare to talk terms with me? Then you're still not satisfied. That's fine. I've always been a very fair and democratic person. As Meng Jueguang said, he pointed at Meng Tong and said, "I will now give the best cave abode number 1 to Meng Tong, but I will also give you a chance to challenge him, as long as you can win. How about the cave abode number 1 belongs to you? According to the rules of the cultivation world, the strong are respected. Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. If you can't even beat him, I can't give you the cave abode number 1, can I? Then when the time comes, will junior brother Meng Tong also say that I am unfair? Well, he can't break through to the Foundation Establishment realm. Is it because of me?" As Meng Jueguang said so, Meng Tong immediately jumped out excitedly. He provoked Xiao Honkai and said, "Do you want to fight? If it wasn't for Cousin Joe's face, I would usually be too lazy to bother with trash like you who is only at the peak of the late stage of Heaven stage. But today I will give you this chance, and I am willing to lose. If I lose, I am willing to take the cave abode number 15, and if I can't break through to the Foundation Establishment realm, I will not blame anyone and let senior brother Meng scold me. Xiao Honkai, junior brother Meng Tong, is of noble character and unquestionable integrity. What do you think?" Meng Jueguang was very satisfied with Meng Tong's reaction. Now he wanted to see what Xiao Honkai had to say. Xiao Honkai looked at the eager Meng Tong, and his face suddenly turned green and purple. He was only an expert at the peak of the late stage of Heaven stage, and he had just broken through not long ago. His foundation was not very stable, and the other party was an expert at the peak of the late stage of Heaven stage. They were at least 2 levels apart. How could he fight? If they really fought, he might not even be able to take a casual move from the other party. Seeing that Xiao Honkai flinched, Meng Tong disdainfully said, "Gutless trash, I don't think you should be called Xiao Honkai in the future. Just call yourself Lumber Waste." Meng Jueguang had already expected this. He smiled indifferently and turned to look at all the newcomers and said, "What I said just now is not only effective for him, but also for all of you. If you're not satisfied with the cave abode allocated to you, no problem. As long as you can beat Meng Tong here, the cave abode number 1 is yours. Of course, if you have a good relationship in private, you can also exchange cave abodes in private. I won't interfere in this." Meng Tong cooperatively puffed out his chest. There were 15 newcomers present. Except for Lin Yi and Xiao Ran, among the other local newcomers, only he, Meng Tong, was at the peak of the late stage of Heaven stage. No one could match him at all. As for Lin Yi and Xiao Ran, these 2 country bumpkins from the secular world, even if they were also at the great perfection realm, he would not put them in his eyes. No matter what, he was still a sitting cannon on Heaven Stage Island. Even if their strength levels were the same, his real strength was much stronger than the fake outsiders in the secular world. There was no comparison between the 2. Seeing that no one dared to say anything, Meng Jueguang continued to call out names. Lin. Chapter 3562. Cave Abode Number 14. Meng Jueguang looked at Lin Yi mockingly and said, "You should really thank this junior brother Lumberwaste. If it wasn't for him stirring up trouble during the welcoming ceremony, Cave Abode Number 15 would have been prepared for you. Now, although Cave Abode Number 14 is the worst compared to the other caves, compared to Cave Abode Number 15, it can be said that your ancestors have done good deeds. This Lin, he was an outsider, and he was brought here by Lumberwaste. It would be strange if Meng Jueguang gave him a good attitude." Immediately after, without waiting for Lin Yi to speak, Meng Jueguang continued to call out names. Xiao Ran, Cave abode number 13. Here, Xiao Ran responded and walked to Lin Yi's side. After thinking for a while, he turned his head and whispered to Lin, "Brother Lin, why don't you come to my cave abode number 13 to cultivate together in the future? Although it's not much better than cave abode number 14, it will still be of some help." When Xiao Ran was in the common world, he was indebted to Lin Yi for taking care of him. Now that he was on Sky Class Island, he saw that Lin Yi got the 14th cave, and he was doing better than him. He naturally had to return the favor. From his point of view, a drop of water should be returned with a spring of water. Otherwise, Xiao Chun would be letting down his conscience. "Ha! Cultivate together? Junior brother Lumber Waste, didn't you teach them the rules?" Meng Juiguang was strong, so his hearing was naturally good. After hearing Xiao Ran's words, he immediately laughed mockingly. Lumber Waste's face was full of awkwardness. He could only go forward and explain to the two of them, "Junior brothers, the spiritual chi produced in the cultivation cave abode every day is fixed. If two people cultivate together, the effect will be shared. Even if it's cave abode number 1, if two people enter, the effect will at most be similar to cave abode number 7 or 8. Moreover, after a long time, the cave abode's spiritual chi will be overdrawn, and the effect will slowly deteriorate. Therefore, the pavilion master has a rule that each cave abode can only accommodate one person to cultivate." "I see." Only now did Lin Yi understand. He patted Xiao Ran's shoulder and said, "I appreciate your good intentions, but the cultivation method I cultivate in is rather special. The requirement for the density of spiritual energy isn't too high. Abode 14 is already sufficient. Besides, didn't this senior brother Meng say that there's still a chance to change? His cultivation technique is special." These words made Meng Juiguang sneer in his heart. He had been in the North Island of Heaven stage for so many years, but he had never heard of a cultivator who didn't need the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, unless he was a physical cultivator. However, Lin Yi was clearly a master of inner force. Wasn't this bragging? Chapter 3563. However, even someone who had never seen the world felt that he was the most awesome. Wasn't this what a frog at the bottom of a well was like? Don't worry. No matter what, we are still fellow disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion. At most, I will cripple you, not kill you. Meng Tong clenched his fists as he walked towards Lin Yi with a sinister smile. The surrounding people hastily retreated to the side, revealing expressions of anticipation. After all, this was the first battle they had witnessed since joining the Welcome Pavilion. Moreover, the two sides were this year's most powerful Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomer, Meng Tong, and the other was the secular world's Lin Yi. Both were very interesting characters, so they naturally had to enjoy this show. "Junior brother Lin Yi, if you can't do it, hurry up and admit defeat. This way, the battle will be over and he won't be able to attack you anymore." The bitter senior brother hastily said to Lin Yi before retreating. Like everyone else, he didn't think highly of Lin Yi, and if Lin Yi stubbornly refused to admit defeat, then it would be very easy for him to lose his life. Although Xiao Ran had seen Lin Yi's strength in the secular world, he was also a little worried at this moment. However, he couldn't persuade Lin Yi to stop, so he could only say, "Brother Lin, you can do it." Lin Yi nodded to the two, then turned to look at Meng Tong, and lightly said, "Please. Humph, you still dare to act cool in front of me when you're facing a disaster? You really don't know how to write the word death." Meng Tong laughed loudly as he pounced in front of Lin Yi. Without warning, he swept out with the 20th style of Thousand Legs. This was his usual martial skill. His 1,000 legs contained the strength of 1,000 caddies. Even if he were to face a native expert of the same level, it would be powerful enough to kill, not to mention that his opponent was just a fake from the secular world. After being hit by the leg wind, the bow, everyone's faces changed drastically. Only Lin Yi, the person in question, didn't panic at all. He didn't put on any tricks. What greeted him was the 15th move of the Raging Fire 8 trigrams palm. Lin, he was afraid that others would think that his strength was too high and that they would unite against a common enemy. So he did not use his strongest move. However, just the 15 style of the Wildfire 8 trigrams palm was enough to instantly kill a peak late-stage heaven rank expert. He didn't want to take Meng Tong's life. If that was the case, he probably wouldn't be able to continue staying on the North Island. Therefore, his goal was merely to establish his might and make others feel that he wasn't someone to be bullied. However, he wouldn't be so ruthless as to kill everyone the moment he appeared. If Meng Tong could back down, that would be great. If not, then bring it on. He did not kill Meng Tong. Those big shots wouldn't stand up for him. Bang! Boom! As the leg and the palm collided, Meng Tong was sent flying by Lin Yi's palm. His internal organs felt uncomfortable as if they had been displaced. Before he could struggle to get up, he spat out a mouthful of blood. It was a ghastly sight. Hiss! Everyone in the audience suddenly became quiet. There was only a series of gasps left. The gazes that looked at Lin Yi were all incomparably shocked. What kind of strength was able to send Meng Tong, a peak late-stage heaven rank expert, flying with one palm? Could it be that the people in the secular world were already overbearing to such an extent? Not only these newcomers, but even Meng Jiuguang looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. One must know that although Meng Tong was a grassroots rogue cultivator, he was not considered weak in the heaven rank great perfection level. However, he couldn't be considered weak at the level of heaven stage great circle. In the end, he was defeated by a trash from the secular world in one move. This result was too unexpected. Thanks for letting me win. Lin Yi smiled lightly. In order not to expose his strength as a foundation establishment stage, he had already deliberately suppressed his strength to the heaven rank great perfection level. But even so, Meng Tong was still vulnerable in front of him. You can't even beat a trash from the secular world. What a waste. Meng Jiuguang looked at the battered Meng Tong on the ground and scolded him resentfully. Originally, it was specially arranged for Meng Tong to be in the limelight, so that he could establish his power in front of these newcomers. But he didn't expect that mud could not hold up a wall. Now, the limelight was all snatched by this guy, Lin Yi. The strong were respected. The newcomers present were originally fence-sitters who did not have a firm stand. The reason why they spared no effort to curry favor with Meng Tong was purely because he was strong and had a strong background. It was purely because he was strong and had a strong background. Now that he was knocked down by Lin Yi in one move, the tides had changed. Although it could be said that because of the existence of Meng Jiuguang, these people would not directly rely on Lin Yi. But at this moment, they looked at Lin Yi with reverence in their eyes. They knew that it would not be so easy for Meng Tong to subdue them in the future. At the very least, they had to first ask Lin Yi, this guy who hid his strength, under the watchful eyes of the crowd. After struggling for a moment, Meng Tong finally got up and looked at Lin Yi with eyes full of resentment. This time, he had lost a lot of face in front of everyone. He was defeated by a country bumpkin in one move. It was simply a great shame that could not be washed away in this life. If these words were to spread, he could forget about having a foothold in the welcome pavilion. Looking at your eyes, you seem to be very unconvinced, but it doesn't matter. The competition has just begun. I only used one move and just warmed up. I haven't gotten into the groove yet. Why don't we continue? Lin Yi looked at Meng Tong indifferently. Clearly, this guy was unconvinced. Again? Fuck. Warm up. Not in the groove. Seeing that everyone's eyes were focused on him, Meng Tong's expression suddenly changed again, and he subconsciously took 2 steps back. Although Lin Yi did not kill him, he had suffered the 15th move of the wild 8 trigram palm. It was already quite serious. Didn't you see that Meng Tong had already vomited blood all over the ground? At this time, he was struggling to get up because he was holding on to his last bit of face. If he were to receive another palm, he would be beaten to death on the spot. Seeing that Meng Tong had been scared off by Lin Yi's casual words, a few rookies by the side could not help but laugh. This Meng Tong was just flaunting his prowess and acting like he was invincible. But after suffering a palm strike, he was so scared The contrast was huge. To think that he had said that Lin Yi was posturing. Now, it seemed that he was the one who said it. He was really boasting. Now, not only did he fail the posture, he became a retard. What are you laughing at? The arranged battle between fellow disciples is just a spar. Is it so funny? Are you laughing because you think you are good enough and want to go up and try? And Meng Tong, you idiot, how long do you want to embarrass me? Hurry up and leave. Meng Jiuguang's face was very livid. If it weren't for the fact that so many pairs of eyes were watching, he would have personally beaten Meng Tong done up. Chapter 35-64. Feeling Meng Jiuguang's murderous gaze behind him, Meng Tong's heart skipped a beat, but he refused to lose face. He hurriedly puffed out his chest and said, "Humph, you country bumpkin from the secular world, what are you so proud of? You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I didn't use my full strength just now because we are brothers, but I didn't expect you to use your full strength to deal with me. If it wasn't for my superior strength, I would have been killed by you if it was a peak late stage, heaven stage expert. I was soft-hearted for a moment and let you take advantage of me. Could it be that you really think you can beat me, a native perfection realm expert of Heaven Stage Island? What a villain." Meng Tong's words made the newcomers look at Lin Yi thoughtfully. These words saved some face for Meng Tong. From his arrogant performance just now, it was normal for him to be careless and not use his full strength. After all, it was unreasonable for a native Heaven Stage expert to be inferior to a mortal world expert at the same level. This was completely subverting common sense. So that's how it is. I was wondering why you were so easily crippled. Lin Yi nodded in realization and said, "I said it. Defeating you is easy and pleasant. But since it was a moment of carelessness, then please go all out. Let's do it again, how about it? This is fair and just." After Lin Yi finished speaking, he looked at Meng Tong with a faint smile. This guy obviously didn't even have enough strength to speak, but he could still find a reason to excuse himself. He was really stubborn and wouldn't shed tears until he saw the coffin. Meng Tong's expression suddenly froze. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he could only continue saying, "Humph, you're quite mean, aren't you? I was seriously injured by your sneak attack just now, and you still want me to fight with you. You clearly want to kill me. How about this? Wait for me. In the ranking competition a month later, I will let you know what a true Heaven Stage expert is. No, what is a Foundation Establishment expert? When the time comes, I will make you cry very rhythmically. A month later? All right, I'll train hard, and maybe I won't even need to ambush you when the time comes." Lin Yi said nonchalantly. Since Meng Tong was so stubborn, Lin Yi was too lazy to continue forcing him. Anyway, the purpose of establishing his prestige had been achieved. If he continued to be overbearing, he was afraid that the higher-ups of the welcoming pavilion would be disgusted. That would not be good. Immediately, he turned to look at Meng Jiuguang and said, "Senior brother Meng, the rules you set just now should still be in effect, right?" As for Meng Jiuguang, he didn't care if he offended him or not. In any case, today's actions had completely offended him, and the two of them could no longer be reconciled. Humph, of course it counts. Meng Jiuguang glanced at Meng Tong with a livid expression and did not deny it. After all, this was a rule he had set up in public. He couldn't just slap himself in the face and deny it. That's good. Thank you, senior brother Meng. Lin Yi smiled faintly. When everyone present thought that he couldn't wait to ask Meng Tong for cave number 1, he turned to look at Xiao Honkai and said, "Brother Xiao, I want to exchange my cave number 14 for your cave number 15. Is that okay?" Xiao Honkai was stunned and looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. He had already accepted his fate, but he didn't expect that Lin Yi would actually want to exchange caves with him. Although cave number 14 was ranked last among all caves, it was still much better than cave number 15, which was abandoned halfway in history. But it was much better than number 15, the worst cave residence in history, which had been abandoned midway. If number 15 could make everyone despair, then number 14 cave residence, as long as one worked hard, would be able to make everyone feel hopeless. But it was still much better than cave number 15, which was the worst cave in history. One made people feel hopeless, while the other gave them hope. Between the two, there was no difference. The difference between the two was like heaven and earth. Is this really okay? After coming to his senses, Xiao Honkai was overjoyed. He wasn't stupid. He had already guessed why Lin Yi wanted to do this. Although it was very likely to offend Meng Tong, and even senior brother Meng Jueguang, who was behind him, he wasn't afraid of this. Because regardless of whether he was offended or not, it was impossible for him to be accepted by these people. Otherwise, they wouldn't have given him cave number 15 without hesitation. Now that Lin Yi showed kindness to him, being able to exchange from cave number 15 to cave number 14, this was simply like a pie falling from the sky. It was enough to change the future trajectory of his life. How could he not be ecstatic? Of course, senior brother Meng just said that we can exchange caves privately. Lin Yi glanced at the gloomy face of Meng Jueguang and said faintly, for Xiao Honkai, this was something that could change the course of his life, but for Lin Yi, it was nothing more than a small matter. Although Xiao Honkai was only acquainted with this person for the first time from his previous performance, although this person's strength wasn't high, he was hot-blooded. This was rare in the indifferent cultivation world. Lin Yi had a good impression of him. He naturally wouldn't be stingy with this kind of small favor that he could help conveniently. Then I'll thank Brother Lin. Xiao Honkai no longer looked at the faces of Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong. He immediately agreed happily and consciously walked behind Lin Yi. After experiencing today's incident, Meng Tong and others would inevitably hate him more in the future. If he wanted to continue to stay here, he could only team up with Lin Yi and others. Although Lin Yi came from the secular world, he gave him quite a good impression and was worth befriending. Lin Yi immediately looked at Meng Tong and said, "Then now cave number 15 is mine. Meng Tong, according to the rules set by senior brother Meng, I want to use it to exchange for cave number 1 at the foot of the mountain. You won't go back on your words, right? What? You actually want me to live in the worst cave in history?" Meng Tong was wondering before that Lin Yi didn't exchange cave with him after winning, but went to exchange cave with Xiao Honkai. What kind of thinking was this? Could it be that he didn't want his own cave because he was being pretentious? So he was quite happy until now when he realized Lin Yi's intention. It was as if he was struck by lightning on a clear day. It took him a long time to react. His resentful eyes scanned back and forth between Lin Yi and Xiao Honkai. He couldn't wait to eat these two people alive. After all, even if he used cave number 1 at the foot of the mountain to exchange cave number 14 at the foot of the mountain, this already made him gnash his teeth. In the end, he didn't expect that Lin Yi would play even more ruthlessly. He actually wanted him to live in the worst cave number 15 in history. Chapter 3565. Ninth cousin, you have to help me. Meng Tong could only look at Meng Jueguang eagerly. At this time, the only one who could decide his fate was his ninth cousin. As long as Meng Jueguang said that it was invalid, then everything would not be a problem. Meng Jueguang glared at him hatefully. If it wasn't for this good-for-nothing, how could he fall into such an embarrassing situation? The words that were said before were like spilled water. With so many people watching, how could he take it back? At this time, if he really went back on his words, not only Meng Tong, but also Meng Jueguang would become the laughingstock of the entire welcome pavilion. He would not be able to lift his head in front of the stewards of the other two pavilions. Under the gaze of all the people present, Meng Jueguang had to grit his teeth and said, "This is the rule of welcome pavilion. Everyone has to abide by it, no exceptions. Even I have to abide by it." As soon as these words came out, Meng Tong suddenly looked as if he had lost his parents. But under the pressure of Meng Jueguang, he could only swallow his anger. But Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, "Senior brother Meng is wise." Meng Jueguang did not express his opinion, but this praise was as disgusting as eating a fly, and it was the kind of fly that had just flown out of the cesspool. But then, Lin Yi turned to Xiao Ran and said, Xiao Ran, I will now exchange my number 1 cave residence for your number 13 cave residence. Is that okay? Exchange again? There was a sudden uproar. Previously, Lin Yi wanted to exchange number 14 cave residence for Qiao Hongsai's number 15 cave residence. It was understandable because he wanted to attack Meng Tong. But now this guy actually wanted to exchange his number 1 cave residence for Xiao Ran's number 13 cave residence. This was really incomprehensible. If it were others, they would be happy to get the number 1 cave residence. Why would he take the initiative to exchange his number 13 cave residence? He must be sick in the head. Was it purely because of his noble character and unquestionable integrity? The cultivation world had always been cruel. Since this Lin, he was able to stand out in the secular world. He shouldn't be so childish. Could it be that he had other intentions? Brother Lin, this is too precious. Forgive me, I can't accept it. Xiao Ran was stunned for a moment, then quickly waved his hand and refused. Although he and Lin Yi had come from the secular world together, so their relationship was naturally closer than the other rookies present. It was only natural for them to take care of each other. But the problem was that the number 1 cave abode at the foot of the mountain was too important. It was so important that even if he worked like a slave for Lin Yi in the future, he might not be able to repay this favor. Indeed, the number 1 cave abode at the foot of the mountain was the dream abode of all the rookies present. He, Xiao Ran, was no exception. With his cultivation at the peak of the late stage of Heaven Stage, if combined with the effects of the number 1 cave abode at the foot of the mountain, not to mention competing with the people from the Soaring Sky Pavilion and the Mysterious Pavilion, it was very likely that he would sit on the top seat of the rookies present in the Blue Cloud Pavilion in the future. To anyone, this was an irresistible temptation. It was the same for Xiao Ran, and should be the same for Lin Yi. Although Lin Yi previously said that his cultivation technique was special and did not have a high concentration of spiritual energy, everyone knew that this was just an excuse. However, anyone with a discerning eye would know that this was just an excuse. No matter how heaven-defying and eccentric a cultivation technique was, the more spiritual qi of heaven and earth, the better. There was no such thing as the denser the spiritual qi, the worse the effect of cultivation. Brother Xiao, just accept it. If it really doesn't work, you can use it for half a month, and we can exchange it. Although Lin Yi said it with a smile, his words were filled with no room for doubt. He did not give Xiao Ran the slightest chance to refuse. It's settled. Unless you want to break off relations with me in the future, revenge must be taken. Kindness must be repaid. This had always been Lin Yi's principle. Just based on Xiao Ran's good intention of asking him to go to cave house number 13 at the foot of the mountain to cultivate, he wanted to return the favor. Moreover, they came up together from the secular world, so they were naturally allies who could help each other in the future. It was not necessarily a bad thing for Lin Yi to let Xiao Ran's strength improve a little faster. Seeing that Lin Yi's attitude was so firm, it did not seem like he was joking, and it was actually serious to the point of breaking off relations. Xiao Ran hesitated for a moment and had no choice but to agree. Then, all right, I can't thank you enough for your kindness. In the future, I am willing to follow Brother Lin's lead. Born in the Xiao family, an ancient family that had declined, Xiao Ran was used to the fickleness of human nature since he was young. He had seen a lot of mutual deception, but it was the first time he met an extraordinary person like Lin Yi. Although his strength was only at heaven's stage great perfection, his intuition, honed by years of adversity, told him that the Lin Yi in front of him would definitely not be an ordinary person in the future. It didn't matter if it was gratitude or a long-term investment. Xiao Ran knew that from this day onwards, he had been labeled as Lin Yi's follower in front of everyone. From now on in the welcoming pavilion, he would advance and retreat together with Lin Yi. They would rise and fall together, and they would fall together. And at this time, all the rookies looked at Lin Yi differently. Chapter 3566. Lin he even began to rearrange the cave abodes in front of everyone. This was a complete provocation to him, the steward's senior apprentice brother, who had sole authority. One had to know that even the senior brother, who was also a steward, didn't dare to criticize these things under his pressure. Unfortunately, he had already announced that they were allowed to exchange cave abodes privately. This was also the rule of the Welcome Pavilion. Meng Jueguang couldn't stop it, even if he wanted to. He could only give himself 2 slaps. If he didn't say this rule just now, how could this newcomer, Linny, take advantage of such a big loophole? What are you still gathering here for? All of you disperse and scram back to your cave abodes. The 2 in the secular world, go ask for the mantra of the cultivation method from the steward. Meng Jueguang was angry looking at this group of newcomers, especially Lin Yi. If there wasn't the sect rule that inner sect disciples couldn't attack outer sect disciples, he would probably attack Lin Yi right now. He was just a country bumpkin from the secular world. Who was he? Unfortunately, inner sect disciples couldn't even challenge outer sect disciples, unless outer sect disciples had already advanced to the foundation establishment stage. He could only take revenge in other ways in the future. Since the steward's senior apprentice brother had spoken, the group of newcomers looked at each other and dispersed. They couldn't wait to experience their own cave abodes. Seeing that almost everyone had left, Meng Tong hurriedly ran to Meng Jueguang and complained, "Ninth cousin, you have to help me. Don't tell me you really want me to live in the 15th cave abode at the foot of the mountain. If that's the case, how am I going to beat that hateful Lin Yi a month later? Who can you blame for not living up to expectations? You can't even beat a trash from the secular world. You've really lost all your face." Meng Jueguang scolded angrily. He originally had high hopes for Meng Tong and was prepared to train him to be his right-hand man. Now, he didn't do anything. Instead, he had brought trouble upon himself. Meng Tong's face suddenly turned red, and he hurriedly explained, "Ninth cousin brother, don't you know my strength? Just now, I was really careless and let Lin Yi take advantage of the loophole. I originally wanted to give him some face, but I didn't expect that he would attack me from the beginning." Meng Jueguang said thoughtfully, "That's true. That kid really is sinister. If you really fought fair and square, there's no reason for you, a local great perfection deity, to lose to a commoner like him. That's why, in next month's qualifying competition, I will definitely beat him to a pulp. However, if Ninth Cousin Brother really wants me to live in the 15th Immortal's Cave at the foot of the mountain, then it will be hard to say." Meng Tong hurriedly said. What he was most afraid of was that Meng Jueguang would no longer care about him. If he lost such a big backer for no reason, he would really have no place to cry. How can I go back on my word in public? Kid, listen to me. Whether you want to live or not, you have to live in the 15th Immortal's Cave at the foot of the mountain for me. Meng Jueguang glanced at him sternly. Meng Tong was so frightened that he shivered. After a pause, Meng Jueguang slowed down his tone and said, "But you don't have to worry. Although you live in the worst 15th Immortal's Cave at the foot of the mountain, that Lin Yi himself pretended to live in the 14th Immortal's Cave at the foot of the mountain. It's not much better than yours. I will think of a way to give you more spiritual jades. At that time, it will be enough for you to shake him off. You can use the worst Immortal's Cave to step on him instead. Wouldn't it be more satisfying to take revenge this way? This also indirectly proves that you're stronger than Lin Yi. Otherwise, if your strength is not stronger than him at the beginning, how can you defeat him in a situation where the cultivation environment is worse than his?" That's right. Ninth cousin is really brilliant. Meng Tong's eyes suddenly lit up with excitement. For newcomers, the most important cultivation resources were mainly 2 things. One was the Immortal's Cave, and the other was spiritual jades. Comparing the 2, the effect of spiritual jades was far above the Immortal's Cave. Especially compared to the inferior Immortal's Cave at the foot of the mountain, the effect was hundreds or even thousands of times better. Otherwise, spiritual jades would not be the first choice for most people to help them break through to the foundation establishment realm. But even so, spiritual jades had two disadvantages compared to a mortal's cave. One was that they were rare and precious and difficult to obtain, especially for newcomers. The second was that they were one-time consumables. If they absorbed it with all their strength, it would take 2 to 3 days at the fastest, 4 to 5 days at the slowest, and the spiritual chi inside would be completely consumed. They were not like a mortal's cave that could be used for a long time. According to the rules, the Welcome Pavilion would give a piece of spiritual jades to newcomers every month. Although this process seemed very fair, it should be known that there were always big and small spiritual jades. The ones responsible for the distribution of spiritual jades were the senior brothers, like Meng Jueguang. When the time came, the Blue Cloud Pavilion would be decided by Meng Jueguang's word. As for the nominal senior brother in charge, Kubai, he was completely ignored by them. Leaving aside Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong's schemes, Lin Yi informed senior brother Bitter Corner, Xiao Ran, and Xiao Honkai, and then entered his immortal's cave number 14 at the foot of the mountain. He didn't use any mental cultivation method, so he didn't know whether Xiao Ran needed it or not. If he did, senior brother Bitter Corner wouldn't make things difficult for him. After looking around, Lin Yi found that the spiritual chi inside the immortal's cave was coming from the ground. The concentration of spiritual chi was about 8 to 10 times that of the outside. If it was in the secular world, it would be enough to be called a cultivation holy land. Unfortunately, Lin Yi had long been used to the ultra-high concentration of spiritual chi in the space of the jade pendant, so he didn't care about it all. According to this speculation, not to mention the Immortals Cave number 1 at the foot of the mountain, even the best Immortals Cave number 1 at the top of the mountain was still far from as abnormal as the space of the jade pendant. This was also the reason why Lin Yi just gave the Immortals Cave to Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai. Sitting in such a treasure mountain like the space of the jade pendant, if Lin Yi still didn't have enough confidence, then he was really sick. After closing the Immortals Cave, Lin Yi sat cross-legged and entered the space of the jade pendant. Above every cultivation Immortals Cave, there was a forbidden spell. After a newcomer entered the Immortals Cave, the forbidden spell would be activated, and outsiders couldn't enter without permission. This was also to prevent people from being dishonest and secretly taking advantage of others' Immortals Cave when others were not around. After all, the output of spiritual chi in each Immortals Cave was limited in a certain period of time. When changing the Immortals Cave, it was necessary to ask a master in the Foundation establishment stage to help remove the forbidden spell, and then reactivate the forbidden spell. This was the first time that Lin Yi entered the space of the jade pendant since he was transported to the heavenly stage island, and the scene in front of him shocked him. Jiao Lao. Looking at the strange state of Jiao Yazi, Lin Yi couldn't help but be a little stunned. At this moment, Jiao Yazi was standing on the ground as usual, but for some unknown reason, his whole body had become a transparent shadow, motionless. Chapter 3568. What are they doing here? Could it be that Kong Ming Ming instigated this envoy to find trouble with me? Lin Yi's heart was slightly moved. With Kong Ming Ming's vengeful personality, if he hugged a thick thigh, it would be natural for him to seek revenge. Previously in the secular world, although they had signed a peace treaty, but now that everyone had joined the welcoming pavilion, presumably the other people would no longer care about the treaty. Lin Yi remained calm as he watched the few people slowly walk over. He could only react accordingly. Although the envoy from Soaring Sky Pavilion was very strong, he was also an early-stage Foundation establishment expert. Even if they really fought, he might not be at a disadvantage. If he couldn't win, couldn't he run? Moreover, the welcoming pavilion had its own rules. It should not allow these people to casually make a move on the new disciples. Young Master Su, please wait a moment. Let me introduce you to these new disciples, in case they don't recognize Mount Tai and offend you. Meng Jueguang nodded and bowed to Su Lingchong with a flattering expression. Although the other party was the young master of Soaring Sky Pavilion, strictly speaking, there was no intersection between him and the manager of Blue Cloud Pavilion. However, if he neglected him because of this, then he really could not be any more stupid. Don't forget that welcoming Pavilion's pavilion master, Hu Yunfeng's backer, is the Soaring Sky Pavilion's elder. This young master, Su, could casually say a few words and Meng Jueguang would be annihilated in a matter of minutes. Su Lingchong nodded slightly. Only then did Meng Jueguang turn to the group of new disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion. He immediately changed his dignified expression and said in a clear voice, "All of you listen up. This is young Master Su Lingchong. He is the grandson of Soaring Sky Pavilion's third elder and also the inner disciple manager of Soaring Sky Pavilion. I don't need to say how honorable his status is. Why don't you quickly greet Senior Brother Su?" "Greetings, Senior Brother Su." The group of new disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion hurriedly greeted him in unison. "Forget it." Su Lingchong waved his hand impatiently towards these Clear Cloud Pavilion's lowest rung of the ladder. He didn't care. He had no interest in meeting him at all. He turned to Meng Jueguang and ordered, "Hurry up and get down to business. Don't waste my time." All right. Meng Jueguang hurriedly replied and turned to look at the crowd. "Young Master Su is here for the new deacon, although it has nothing to do with you. But each of you has one vote in your hands, so I still have to explain it to you. Everyone knows that in our welcome pavilion, in addition to the 3 pavilion masters, there are also 2 steward senior brothers who are responsible for everyone's daily training, resource allocation, task allocation, and so on. The affairs are complicated, and in order to better manage you new disciples, in order to improve the relationship between you new disciples, the Welcoming Pavilion has specially created a new deacon position in addition to the 6 steward senior brothers. His responsibility is to distribute low-level tasks to the new disciples of the 3 pavilions, such as cleaning, kitchen cooking, and so on. And this new deacon will be voted for by all the new disciples. Only those who get more than 2/3 of the votes can be elected. Everyone understands, right? The group of new disciples suddenly understood. Those who were slightly smarter quickly figured out the trick. This new deacon position, although nominally only responsible for distributing some low-level tasks, didn't involve any cultivation resources and didn't seem to have any profits to speak of, but this was all just on the surface. In reality, for any new disciple, this position was extremely important. There were 3 reasons. First, as the only new deacon in the Welcome Pavilion, he would naturally be the role model for all the new disciples. Even if it was for the sake of the entire Welcome Pavilion's face, they would inevitably tilt some cultivation resources towards him. Otherwise, as the role model of the new disciples, if he couldn't even pass the foundation establishment stage, wouldn't that make everyone laugh their heads off? Second, although the new deacon was only responsible for distributing some low-level tasks, but as long as he did it well, he could completely establish a wide network of contacts among the new disciples of the 3 pavilions, which would greatly benefit his future development. For example, no one was willing to do the task of cleaning the latrines. I assigned it to others, but not to you. Then shouldn't you think of me as a good person? Third, since the new deacon was a position in the Welcome Pavilion, he would definitely have a position and treatment. Even if it wasn't as good as the steward senior brothers, there would still be some subsidies. Compared to the other new disciples, he would naturally have a head start. After thinking through these 3 points, the thoughts of the new disciples in the Blue Cloud Pavilion suddenly became active. Since the position of the new deacon was voted for, then wouldn't they also have a chance? If they sat in the position of a new deacon, wouldn't they also have a meteoric rise in the future? However, after seeing the aggressive gazes of Su Lingchong and the others, everyone's faces immediately stiffened. They immediately reacted. For the new disciples of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, this was simply an unrealistic fantasy. Among all the new disciples of the 3 pavilions, One had to get more than 2/3 of the votes in order to be elected. What kind of concept was this? Chapter 3569. On the other hand, the other newcomers were silent. They looked at Meng Jueguang with a strange gaze. Even if the newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion didn't have the ability to compete for the position of newcomer deacon, but as the senior brother steward of Blue Cloud Pavilion, he was so attentively canvassing for votes for outsiders. Wasn't this a little too disappointing for his own people? Fellow disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion, I'll leave tomorrow's voting in your hands. If I, Kong Ming Ming, take the position of newcomer deacon, I won't mistreat you in the future. Kong Ming Ming took the opportunity to make a solemn vow to the crowd. Of course, what he said was purely a lie. If he really became the new deacon, all the dirty and tiring work would eventually fall onto the Clear Cloud Pavilion's new disciples. Could it be that he would let the Soaring Sky Pavilion's second-generation disciples do the menial chores? Not to mention the Soaring Sky Pavilion's second-generation cultivators. Even those powerful old fogies from the Profound Secrets Pavilion were not people Huang Xiaolong was willing to offend. The easiest targets to bully were the new trash disciples from the Clear Cloud Pavilion. Rest assured, Junior Brother Kong. The newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion don't have many good points, but they are absolutely obedient. Just wait to become a newcomer deacon. When the time comes, don't forget about me. Meng Jueguang said with a smile. Although Kong Ming was a newcomer from the secular world like Lin Yi, he had the backing of Su Lingchong, the young master of Soaring Sky Pavilion's inner sect. In Meng Jueguang's eyes, Kong Ming's weight was naturally different. He was worth fawning over. Then I'll have to trouble senior brother Ming to help me keep an eye on it. This opportunity is very important to me. I can't afford to fail, Kong Ming Ming said worriedly. This was related to his personal future, so he had to be careful. Junior Brother Kong, you can rest assured. This is an open secret ballot. If anyone dares to disobey, I'll teach them a lesson, Meng Jueguang said without concealment. Hearing this, the newcomer's expressions changed. The threat was a little too direct. However, the rookies finally understood. Since they had no hope of being elected, it did not matter who they voted for. There was no need to offend Meng Jueguang, the eldest senior brother in charge, over such a trivial matter. Seeing that everyone nodded obediently, Meng Jueguang could not help but point his chin at Kong Ming Ming proudly. However, when he saw Lin Yi and the other two, his expression changed. Because Lin Yi and the other two didn't have any intention of going along with him. They just stood there with their arms crossed. He looked on coldly from the sidelines. The others were afraid of Meng Jueguang because they were afraid that he would make things difficult for them in the future. However, Lin Yi and the other two were already on bad terms with him. Even if they obeyed him now, there would be no benefit. It was better to act tough. After all, to Lin, even if he did not want to offend Meng Jueguang, he had already offended them. And this time, if Kong Ming Ming was elected as a new deacon, there would be some trouble in the future. At least the dirtiest and most tiring work would definitely be spread to him. So this time, he definitely could not let him have his way. In fact, even if Su Lingchong helped him settle the Soaring Pavilion's votes, he might not be able to settle the old men in the mysterious pavilion. And according to the rules, the votes had to exceed 2/3. As long as the Blue Cloud Pavilion's Lin Yi and the other two did not agree. Even if the others voted for him, there was a high possibility that he would not be elected in the end. Just now, he had already patted his chest and said something big, but in the end, he immediately saw someone not cooperating. Meng Jueguang's old face suddenly became a little hot. If it was someone else, he would have scolded them long ago. However, facing a troublesome newbie like Lin Yi, there was nothing he could do. He clearly didn't want to listen to you. Even if you made things difficult for him in the future, he wasn't afraid of you. What else could you do? Senior Brother Ming, can't you handle them? Kong Ming Ming quickly realized that something was wrong. After all, Lin E and Company's unwavering stance was the complete opposite of the other rookies' submissive performance. Furthermore, Lin E was a thorn in his side that he paid special attention to. It was hard for him not to notice it. There are always some arrogant newbies who don't want to be disciplined. There's still a long way to go. Your brother, will let them know how powerful I am. Meng Jueguang could only say with a shy face. There's still a long way to go. Kong Mingming couldn't help but roll his eyes. For Meng Jueguang, of course, there was still a long way to go. However, he couldn't wait. The voting would be held tomorrow morning. If he couldn't win over the Blue Cloud Pavilion's side, the votes might not reach 2/3. Then, all his efforts would be in vain. No, he had to quickly nip the risk in the bud. As for seeking revenge on Lin E, as long as he became the new deacon, there would be plenty of opportunities in the future. Kong Mingming had no choice but to explain the situation to Su Lingqiong. Su Lingqiong nodded and signaled him to personally settle it. After all, Kong Mingming was someone he publicly supported. Before coming here, he had already built up enough momentum. If he couldn't get the new deacon tomorrow, then if word got out, even he, Master Su, would lose face along with him. Kong Mingming was instantly overjoyed. He quickly followed behind Su Lingqiong and walked towards Lin E.